Hello and welcome to the 3 Levels Deep podcast. We're in December, it's awards ceremony season, but that's not what we're doing today. Today we're just going to be talking about some games we've been playing and a little bit of a recap of the Game Awards. I'm Santo, I'm joined here by
Matt, hello.
And
Alex, hello.
Awesome.
I'm here today.
So I know we teased this last episode, but I think let's start off by talking about a sequel to a game that we've talked about fairly glowingly on the podcast before, and that's Wargroove, because Wargroove 2 came out.
Yep.
Me and Alex have been playing that. I've essentially done everything in the game outside of a couple mission achievements, and of course playing multiplayer.
Yeah,
we meant to do that at some point. That didn't end up happening. So our only multiplayer experience was from the beta, in which you trounced me.
Yeah. In classic fashion, I'm sure if it was ranked, you would have trounced me.
Yep. That's how that works. Wargroove 2, I kind of want to just call it Wargroove.
Yeah,
but
pretty much.
I that was like the first note I put in, and then I finished the game, I'm like, actually, no. So, not to start off on a downer here, but I think this game's unfinished. Did you finish the campaign?
I'm not. I'm in the home stretch of the campaign, but I haven't finished it.
Did you finish the conquest mode?
No.
Okay. The last parts of both of those are ridiculously short, and I think that I don't necessarily understand why, because it's like games. I don't know when they started development on this, but Wargroove, the original Wargroove was like 2017 or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't believe the developers released much since. So it's like,
Well, and you know, when it comes to the core mechanics and engine and even a lot of the art assets, a lot of the game is the same.
Yeah.
Like like the engine's clearly the same engine. It's clearly that they've used a lot of the same art assets that they had before. Which, to be clear, I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but the expectation is that the extra effort that they put in to make it a new game would be in the campaign.
Yeah.
Which it mostly is, from what I've seen.
Well, it's mostly the conquest mode that's a bit different, because there's a little bit of like new mechanics there, like the items that you can put on units.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the item mechanics are in the campaign too. They're more relevant, I think, for the conquest mode.
Yeah, because you have more control over them, other than just here's a couple items you get on the map. Conquest mode is a big new addition. It's a fun little way to engage with like the tactical gameplay. But I personally have always preferred maps where you start out with like nothing. You build your force and you go across the map that way, recruitment building and stuff like that, which conquest mode just isn't, because it's just all pre-deployed missions basically.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason I haven't played a ton of conquest mode, is because I'm not a huge fan of it.
So conquest mode is basically you got Fire Emblem in my Advance Wars.
No, you got roguelike in my Advance Wars.
Yeah,
that's kind of the basis where you choose one of 3 commanders at the start and one of 3 like initial unit loadouts, and then go across a little random map of events and battles.
I feel like it's not totally random though, because there's definitely some scenarios where the map and the enemy formation and units are the same, and I've seen them more than once.
Yeah, some of them seem to be like in different orders mostly.
Yeah, so it feels like it's a random selection of kind of crafted scenarios to me.
So the problem I have with Conquest is that the problem I have with the entire game is that I think the game does a pretty good job of pacing out the content. Like every mission in the campaign, like you're getting like new units and like new like commanders to use and stuff like that. So it's paced out fairly slowly, which I initially like that. But if you're going to do that, you need to have a payoff where it all kind of coalesces together. The final campaign of Wargroove 2 is 2 missions.
Oh, what?
One of them's a gimmick mission, and one of them's pre-deployed with like a bunch of commanders.
Oh, that's awful.
So you never really get a chance to have a big like blow off, like full strategy kind of moment in the game, because every map is like kind of built towards one particular unit that you're like experiencing for the first time.
Yeah, because even where I'm at in like there's the 4 initial campaigns, and then there's like a 5th campaign you unlock, right? It's basically
there's the tutorial, and then there's 3 campaigns, and then there's the final one.
Yeah,
where it's basically like land, air, sea.
Yeah,
that's how the campaigns kind of are structured.
Yeah, but that means even in the even where I'm at in the 3rd or 4th campaign, depending on what you look at, the tutorial is actually pretty long. It's pretty easy for anyone that's played Wargroove though, like the first game. So yeah, that's a bit of a disappointment, especially because even the first Wargroove had actually quite a number of late game missions, almost too many. Because there was a bunch of pre-deployed missions like at the end of Wargroove 1's campaign that I didn't actually like a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. But there were a lot of them, and they were a thing that the game was building to in the campaign.
Yeah, and the last hardest mode of Conquest is like it's basically like event boss, event boss, event boss, event boss. And there's like none or very little like choosing what direction you go. It's like the last Conquest is shorter than like the easiest intro to Conquest, like by a long margin. And all the bonuses that you would be accruing in the other Conquest modes, like all your archers can fire like 1 tile further, or your swordsmen get buffed. They're all replaced by debuffs this time. Oh. So it's not a campaign that I want to do over and over again, because it just doesn't feel good to complete. Where it's like, I'm just getting a bunch of negatives stacked on me for this very short campaign of just like boss fights.
And you know what? This is one of those things that I feel like we've talked about before, but giving the player debuffs is often just not fun. And okay, you gotta increase the difficulty. Give the opponent buffs, and it's so obvious too, because the enemy units don't usually have many items.
Only the boss enemies do.
Yeah, they don't usually have a lot of interesting kind of stuff going on, and I imagine part of that is just because the AI is not actually very good, to be honest.
No, the AI is pretty terrible.
It's pretty terrible. It's very easy to exploit, which I feel like you kind of have to. And this is actually one of the things that I noticed. I feel like it's more pronounced in Wargroove 2, simply because there's way more pre-deployed missions. And I would say that a lot of the pre-deployed missions, they kind of rely on you almost abusing the AI in order to complete them, because they are just so unfair in terms of how many units you have to defeat versus how many units you have, and you don't get more units, or you get a very, very limited amount of additional units. Mm-hmm. There's one in particular I'm thinking of where, honestly, it's kind of interesting because there's these portals. You can there's 3 or 4 stages to the level, and you basically have to use a flyer or something to cross a chasm and then activate a portal, capture it and activate it to then get the rest of your units across the gaps, which is kind of an interesting idea and mission, but it's just so stacked against you, and it's so annoying that the only way you're really gonna do well on that mission is just by just abusing the AI's terrible targeting decisions.
Yeah, I think it's slightly better this time around. It seems like they don't always just rush your commander every single time.
The AI is slightly better, but it's still
not great.
We're talking about it only 90% of the time it'll make the obvious stupid decision that you're trying to bait it into versus making it every time.
Yeah. One thing that they added for I think that this is new to the campaign, is the optional objectives. And that's where I feel like a lot of the difficulty came in for the campaign, because I thought the campaign was ridiculously easy.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, the optional objectives were the challenge. I was trying to get them every time.
Yeah, and a lot of them are finish in X number of turns, or defeat their commander with your commander.
Yeah, or don't defeat this monster of a unit that gets to wreck basically kill a unit of yours every turn.
Yeah, like
Or
don't defeat the boss. Boss, instead go for the HQ kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that trying to go for those dramatically increased the difficulty, which it needed, because like you're saying, the missions aren't actually hard at all.
It's fun. It's funny though, because like a lot of people complained about the difficulty in Wargroove 1. I even saw a decent amount of people complain about the difficulty in Wargroove 2, and it's like, bro, it's not that bad. Like, the hardest difficulty in this game is your units and the opponent's units deal the same damage to each other. Or the like lesser difficulties is that like the opponents basically like do less damage to you. It's not a fun way to play a strategy game, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and it's weird too.
One like this, where your units are the same as their units, like by default. Like, even though if you're different factions, like your dog unit is the same as their beetle unit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like it would be so easy to alter the difficulty of a lot of maps just by adjusting the number of units that the opponent has, because so many of the maps are either entirely pre-deployed or substantially pre-deployed.
Yeah, and that's what they do in the Conquest mode for the difficulty there, because there's the game difficulty and also the Conquest difficulty, where the Conquest difficulty is they just get more units.
Yeah. But I don't think they do that in the campaign.
No.
Which, I mean, I guess, okay, it's slightly more effort to make the maps, but like, it would be a more meaningful. Like, the hardest difficulty is essentially just normal in any other game.
Exactly, yeah.
And the AI is bad. So it really needs a higher difficulty that's even more stacked against the player, basically.
Yeah, it would have been nice for there to be like a proper challenge difficulty here, like what you're saying, like the hard difficulty feels like the normal difficulty, and that's fine. But if you make a game that's a spiritual successor to another game, you're going to attract a lot of people that are veterans of that other series. So they're probably going to want something a little, a bit more.
Well, and also it's the second game in their own series. Like, assuming that people played the first game, they're already going to have like a pretty good understanding of how the game works. There's only a couple of new units, and they're mostly in the naval combat. So it's not really there's not much to learn, and literally the first three main campaigns and tutorial campaign, you're pretty much constantly being reintroduced to units you've already seen and you already know how they work because you played Wargroove 1. So if they're actually to not have a challenge difficulty, just extremely odd.
And the funny thing is that in Wargroove 1, there was a challenge difficulty in the arcade mode, where the difficulty settings there determined how much money the opponent got. Where they got half on easy, regular on normal, and 50% more on hard. So hard was really difficult.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah,
because being at like that steep of an income disadvantage is like, you have to really, like, every single unit that you have has to make like 50% of its value back, or you're just going to lose, because
they need to make 150% of their value
or
back.
50% extra.
Yeah, like even the meanest like dad hockey coach will only demand 110%. You need to demand 150%.
On average.
Yeah.
More than 150% if you want to win.
Mm-hmm. And, speaking of arcade mode, that's missing from Wargroove 2. Same with the puzzle mode that was in the first game. So it's weird to me.
Wait, they don't have puzzle mode? I thought
they have a level in one of the campaigns that's puzzle mode, basically. But there's no puzzle mode in Wargroove 2. So
weird. I could have sworn I played a couple. But maybe I'm just getting confused with the first game. Maybe.
Like, unless I really missed the option in the options, but I doubt I did. I don't know, it feels like a cash-in almost, because, it's missing stuff from the first game, and I don't think they did substantially enough more to this game to really warrant the 2 in the title.
Yeah, it feels more like an expansion to the first game than an actual sequel. Again, with the fact that it's pretty much the same engine, most of the art assets they already had. And it's funny because they also, because I think that game added 4 units. They had an expansion.
5 units.
5, but they had an expansion for Wargroove 1 that added like 2 or 3 units. And it was just free. So just in terms of like what they're adding in terms of like the core sort of mechanics, like they barely added more than a free expansion they did for the first game. And then of course there's the campaign, but the campaign just feels like mostly a tutorial. Like it's a tutorial almost the whole way through until, like you're saying, only 2 missions in the final campaign.
And those don't test your skills whatsoever. They're both gimmicks.
Yeah, because they're not like a big, huge theater where you're using like, you got to be on point with the land, air, and
yeah. Like the final mission
integration.
of the third campaign felt like it was going to be that, but after you capture enough villages, you get like a bunch of octopi, and then you just easily octopodes, and then you just easily steamroll the mission from there. It's like, oh, what was the point here? Yeah, it's a shame. Like, War has a ton of personality. I think like the writing's still good for the most part. Everything's like,
yeah, they have
cute,
a lot
colorful.
of, they have a lot of story sections where they're like, a lot of cutscenes, almost too many cutscenes at times. But they spent a lot of time on those, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's reasonably well written.
I think the characters are well written. I think the plot is not.
The plot's silly. It tries too hard sometimes. Also, like they have a bunch of scenes where they have like, the music tries to get all like slow and emotional, and it's like, it just doesn't quite work. I don't think. Like they're trying to make it dramatic and serious, and that's not what the tone of the game is, and they do it way too often.
Yeah. The actual stuff that they added in terms of like the units and like the super grooves and a lot of the commanders, I think that's all well done.
Yeah.
But it's just a question of you put in additional content, but you didn't put in enough good content to use that other content in. So I'm personally like kind of disappointed in it. It's an okay game, but I was expecting more.
Yeah, it's like Wargroove 1.5.
Yeah.
And I do like what they've added. I think that we talked about this with Wargroove the first time around, where it was trying to address sort of some of the deficiencies in Advance Wars, and especially the naval combat. And they seem to have doubled down on that, where they're just like, yeah, people thought we improved the naval combat, but it's still not as good as it could be. And they tried to rework it again. And I think the naval combat's like more interesting, and like they've got some good stuff. But like, we slightly tweaked the naval combat to make it a bit better. It's not really like enough to make a whole game out of. I feel like the multiplayer maybe, and I think they've got like, I haven't really spent time with it, but I think they've got a bit better. It sounds like they've got better like kind of matchmaking now and things like that.
Yeah, they put out like a patch that addressed some like multiplayer things and a bunch of bugs, which I actually encountered like a bunch of bugs when I played the game.
Oh yeah.
Which really surprised me because again, this is like so similar engine-wise to the old game. Like I had an archer that I literally couldn't target from the enemy team. That's a bad time.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
Actually, have a ranged unit constantly peppering your forces.
I managed to. There was one bug. I think there was only really one bug that I had, but it was a very consistent bug where my mouse would stop working.
Oh.
And I couldn't select anything. And the only way to fix that was to use the just keyboard controls to do stuff. But there are certain positions in like the menu trees where the keyboard doesn't really seem to work very well. And so it was really frustrating because my inputs would basically just be like broken every once in a while, and I'd have to like alt tab and tab back in and use some keyboard thing to get it out of a menu. And I'm like, why? Like, this is such a weird issue. And yeah, sometimes I would just be like, I'd be targeting, like I'd have an archer or whatever, and I'd be targeting, and then I just couldn't target anyone. and I have to fall back on using a keyboard to like move the cursor around, and it's just a weird bug. And if it happened like once, I wouldn't be that upset. But it felt like it happened like every 2 or 3 missions. I would just have this like weird input issue, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, I had issues with the items as well. Like in the conquest mode, you get like extra progression that you unlock, where you play, you get currency, you unlock stuff, and a couple of things you unlock is like a couple starting items for your squad, like a starting weapon and a starting armor. But I had conquest modes where it seemed like they were assigned to the same thing and they overrode each other. So I was just like, okay, well, I only got one of the items I'm supposed to start out with here. Like, that's silly.
Yeah.
I like one of the items like triples your unit's power, but they take extra damage, or I forget exactly how it is. But like it does more damage, but takes extra damage back. And another one that like makes it say your unit always crits, regardless of what happens. And both of those just like seem to not work at times.
Oh. That's weird. Yeah, the always crit one worked pretty well for me. That was one of my favorites.
I think it was like I had an archer trying to shoot a naval unit, and it didn't work unless I was standing still to get the crit normally. It was like super weird. And I had one like really annoying bug, because there's one mission where you're like kind of defending the central area, and bridges appear and then crumble after a few turns. And like the last part of the mission is to retreat down one of these bridges to like a safe zone, and the optional objective is to like keep a couple like specific generic units alive. And as part of the ending like cutscene stuff, like after you no longer have control of the game, like the last bridge collapses, and one of my units was on that I had to protect. There's nothing pointing you to this bridge collapsing at the end of this mission, because at that point all the bridges are now like active, and the impression is that they're not going to break, and you basically just have to retreat from this horde of units that's been accumulating. But it counted my units as dying, so I just didn't get that optional objective, and I had to play the mission again. It's like, really? Like, the in-engine cutscenes, it's a bad thing, because they denied me that achievement. I don't know, I don't have anything else to say about it. I'm just like, maybe they can add back in like arcade mode, puzzle mode. Like, obviously I can just play random maps against the AI if I really want the non pre-deployed like mission stuff that the arcade mode had. But it'd be nice to have a progression, just like a little bit of progression. Like the arcade mode in the first game was very bare bones. It was just play 5 maps in a row with the same commander, and that's it. So
yeah.
Like,
yeah, well, and it also potentially just gives you a structure for it, right? That's the thing about video games in a nutshell, right? Okay, you've got a game loop, and then you've got some sort of like reason to be doing the game loop, and just doing random maps against the AI, you're like, yeah, you can do that, but it's just not something that it's not kept track of. It's not like it's putting the onus on the player to basically self-motivate, and it's just more difficult to do that. Like let's say I wanted to play all the maps, like, because there's a bunch of skirmish maps, right? Let's say I wanted to go and play all the skirmish maps. Which ones have I played? I don't even know. Like, I've played some of them. Which ones? I couldn't tell you. And I'm sure that there's, even though like we played some skirmish in the first game, so it's not like I played every skirmish map in the first game, and I didn't play a lot of arcade mode. But in theory, if you played through arcade mode and finished all the progression, that would mean that you've played all the maps. And then they're skirmish maps, so they're more set up for that actually full-fledged like
Wargroove experience.
Yeah, the full Wargroove, like the full combat experience, right? Like you can build any unit you want. That's the thing. The campaign, the way that it essentially is a continuous tutorial, that's good. Like, I think of a lot of games like RTSs or strategy games in general, where you've got a campaign that in some ways acts as a tutorial, and then you're ready to kind of like, take on multiplayer or take on just general skirmish or whatever, but you still need to have some sort of structure to sort of show players, well, what have they done? You know, have they actually completed, have they seen all the content even, right? And like the arcade mode's a great way to do that if you set it up to just be like, yeah, you know, each commander plays a different set of maps or whatever. And I don't know. It just seems like an easy thing to do.
That they've done before. In
the same engine. So what even's happening? I don't know. We keep saying it's the same engine. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a lot of work on their engine behind the scenes, like internally, that they probably felt justified a new release. But, you know, that's the thing. Like the differences between what seems to be basically the same to a player and what's actually going on from the dev side, I understand that can be like really, really different. Like even something as simple as, oh, here you can put any of these items on any unit. That could be an immense amount of engine rework behind the scenes that is not obvious to the player, depending on how they've done it. But it makes it, like, I suspect this might have been what happened with the game. They probably put a ton of effort into it to the point where they had to release a game because the studio needs money. But probably a lot of the work they did was more like, you know, refactoring things in the game engine and in the back end of it.
Chucklefish, from what I understand, is a small studio, and all their games that they've made have been very successful, which is just Wargroove and Starbound. Starbound sold 3.5 million copies, and they also do publishing work for other games.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
So it's...
Yeah, we should move on. There's not much else to say.
I've played 2 other games. One I'll talk about very shortly. It's called Reverse 1999. And it's a gacha game, so I'll be short. Don't worry.
9,991.
That would be the reverse of that. I started playing this game because I thought it was made by the same people who made Arknights, which is probably the best gacha game going. But it doesn't seem... It's not the same studio, so either this is a bunch of people that left the original team and made a game, or they're just ripping it off whole hog completely in every way except for the core gameplay. Like all of the progression, a lot of the art, like style and stuff like that, and a lot, like so much of the UI looks the exact same pretty much. But like in not like they like stole assets or anything like that. It's all unique, and the art's actually really good. That's the best part about the game. But it's just kind of funny to me. And the real reason why I want to even bring this up, like I only played it for like a month. I pretty much stopped playing because I'm like, it just didn't grab me. Is because it's like a turn-based role-playing game, and it made me really realize why I didn't like Honkai Star Rail. A lot of the point of gacha games is kind of like limiting player progression by, you know, having to summon like duplicates of the same character to power them up and stuff like that, having to grind resources to level up characters. So it's not like a traditional role-playing game where you have a start, you basically have like a beginning, a middle, and an end, like a progression of like battles that are going to progressively get harder as you play it. Like I was able to completely destroy like the campaign of this because I just like, spent my resources leveling up characters, and then they were just like way stronger than the campaign really needed. So it's like, okay, you're not gating, character progression and power to campaign or anything progression or power. So it just felt completely out of whack until you get to like the special events that get run where they like ratchet up the difficulty really high because it's a limited time event. So that's like why I didn't really like it, which sucks because the art's pretty good and the combat's kind of interesting where it's like it's card based but like really limited, where each character only has 2 cards, and so like they'll randomly show up and then you can spend actions to move them around in your hand, and if you move the same cards together they'll merge and become more powerful. as well as like charge up your character's meter towards their ultimate a little bit faster than just like throwing out attacks. So it was like kind of interesting. We're like, okay, do I want to spend this turn kind of like building up my power for later turns, or do I want to just like try to like spam attacks and like take out enemies and stuff like that? And then, like, standard bunch of characters have buffs and debuffs and other effects like that. So the core of it seems decent, except for the fact that it's a gacha game, so all the progression mechanics completely destroy the core of it. So, and also I should mention that if the gacha aspects of it is the best thing that you can take from Arknight, it seems to be fairly generous. You get a good amount of currency, and like if you're going for specific characters, they make that way easier than other games. Like other games, like they'll release a new character and there'll be like 20 characters of that rarity you can get, and it'll be like, okay, so that means like getting any particular one of those like 5%. So if you want this specific new character, like the one or two that they just introduced, you have like a maybe like 5 or 10% chance to get that specific character in like the 3% chance that you have to roll a character of that rarity in the first place. Whereas this game, it's like, okay, the new characters, there's a 50% chance that if you roll that rarity, you get that character, which is way more than like any other gacha game, basically. And as well, they're like, okay, if you summon X number of times, you'll just get a guaranteed character of that rarity. So if you're going to, implement the gacha money draining mechanic, at least like they did it in a way that is at least a little bit more player friendly than most other gacha games. But that's about it for that. I don't know, Matt, have you spent your time with anything recently?
Yeah, fair bit of things. I have been playing a lot of Fortnite lately.
Fortnite.
All right, what character skins have they introduced since last month?
Going back a little bit, because like last month they actually ran a mini season, which was back on the original map. Mm-hmm. Which I only started playing Fortnite this year, so I never got to experience the original map. And since I exclusively play no build when it comes to the Battle Royale, the map's not exactly designed around that, considering it was the first map and no build wasn't a thing at that time.
Right.
Like it still worked, but there's a lot of hill, like, and you got to go around. It was all right, but I mean, getting to experience the original map at least was nice. But yeah, now they're on to the new season. Peter Griffin.
Oh yeah,
buff Peter Griffin.
Yeah, is that stupid buff Peter Griffin? Is that real?
Yes,
that's ridiculous.
I'll accept it for hitbox reasons, but other than that, like that, it don't look right.
It does not look right.
Well, apparently it's even a reference to an episode where he was buff like that. But
okay.
The rest of the stuff that you can kind of get with him out of the battle pass is actually pretty cool, because it all kind of goes back to the earlier Family Guy stuff. So it's all like a bunch of references. Like, okay, no, that's pretty cool. Like his glider for coming in is the Peter Copter. Mm-hmm. His skydiving like trail behind him is like two wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube men coming out of his hands.
Okay.
His melee tool is the butt scratcher. Butt scratcher here. And of course his emote you can get is, well, have you heard the word?
Oh god. Yeah, so well, if they're going to, pull a bunch of Family Guy jokes, at least, it's from the stuff that I actually watched.
Yeah. But I mean, in addition to that, Snake as well. Which
no cake Snake.
He doesn't you can't actually start working towards unlocking Snake till like halfway through the season. He's not available yet.
Oh.
But yeah, I think Peter's around like level 70 or 80
I think
in
I
the
saw
battle pass.
I think I saw some memes that were just like, Snake, if Snake is in any more crossovers, his butt's gonna like implode.
Next,
it just keeps getting smaller.
His next appearance, he will have Hank Hill ass.
Yeah.
His glutes are disappearing.
Which it wouldn't be the first. Actually, there is an instance of Hank Hill Ass appearing in Fortnite, and it's Spider-Man 2099.
Oh.
Yeah, the new season, new map's good. Bunch of fun new weapons. They actually have attachments now, which you can add at a workbench, or like weapons on the ground will have a random assortment of attachments, so it adds a lot more variety to what you're picking up off the ground.
Fortnite has crafting. It's got crafting now.
I mean, it's always had crafting, but like it's also added. They seem to be turning Fortnite into the next Roblox, because they've also added a bunch of modes, new modes. One is a crossover with Lego. It's just a Lego survival game. Played a little bit of it. It's all right. Not exactly my thing, but it's cool. Like, and even so, like I think like almost all the original skins have, like, Fortnite original characters have like a Lego version of them for the mode, and there's some crossover skins that do have them. Like the Star Wars ones have them because obviously Lego has the Star Wars license there, so that's no problem. But they've also added a Rocket League racing mode.
What?
So basically, it's Rocket League but racing. It's not the not the soccer.
That's not even Rocket League.
No, that's. But Rocket League was racing but soccer, like cars but soccer. How is it even remotely related to Rocket League if you're racing? Is there a ball?
No.
Yeah.
It's just you got the Rocket League car. It's really fun though. The racing mode is
sure,
fun.
but
Yeah. I mean, I think this is. I think broadly, this is just.
I mean,
epic.
Do the cars have sick air control? I guess it's like the Rocket League thing that they could put into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
Yep. And
Do you get to use sick air control to do better at racing and win better?
use it to avoid obstacles.
Okay.
Or,
I guess.
Or jump up to a track on the ceiling or walls.
Okay, that's but yeah, I think more broadly, like, Epic's been quite clear about this, that in their press releases, like their investor press releases, that Epic Games basically wants Fortnite to be the metaverse, because every company just fucking seized on that. And
yeah.
I think, honestly, Fortnite actually has, like, interesting things happening that arguably are a lot closer to that. Like, they've had concerts in Fortnite, which I think is, like, it's not something I would go for. That seems kind of pointless to me. But, like, a live event in the game is, like...
Actually, they did wrap up the mini OG season with a live event. And it was pretty... Because, like, it kind of, like, goes into this whole... Like, you're watching this rocket take off as, like, for the last week, there's been, like, this asteroid just frozen in place, just, like, about to hit the world. And, like, it just... The rocket comes down, creates this huge rift that the asteroid then goes through. Then, like, the entire world gets sucked into that rift. And then your character's just out in space, going into these other worlds. And it was basically just a trailer for all the new modes.
Yeah.
And then Eminem was there.
Of course.
Yeah. And
have to have the rap god.
Like, that's the thing. Epic basically sees that Fortnite is a platform. It's not a game. It's a platform. So they're trying to develop that in whatever way they can. And so they're just like, new modes. Everything. We will try everything.
Yeah, including the one I didn't get to yet. There's a Guitar Hero Rock Band mode now, too.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
It's a platform.
So it seems to be that there's tracks that change on a daily basis, but then if you want to be able to keep playing them, you have to actually, like, buy... If you want to have access to the tracks at any time, you have to buy them from the shop for actual money.
Okay.
But, like, there's a free assortment of tracks you can play each day.
I mean, you know what? That's a cool idea. I think one of the things that I suspect was a challenge with the whole business model on Rock Band or Guitar Hero and other rhythm games is like, you can make the game, sure, and you can sell DLC, but people just players drop off. Like, people lose interest. Having it be, okay, well, you have to pay for every song except for the songs that are free today. That's actually kind of a way to try and retain player interest more long term and then generate hype too. Because as soon as a song that is popular that people are interested in hits the oh, it's free today or it's free this week, and people hear about it, they're going to come back. And then if they like the song, they're going to buy it. Keeps a continual revenue stream going. So that's actually I don't think I've seen a rhythm game that does that.
The weird Guitar Hero.
Oh God.
Was it Guitar Hero Live or the
Yeah.
one that was you could play on a phone? You could connect to well, I think you could connect a Bluetooth guitar to your phone to play it or something like that. Or
Bluetooth guitar.
Because I know
the Wii guitar is a Bluetooth guitar technically.
Okay, technically, you are technically correct. Yes.
But I know the last Guitar Hero, it was a full price game, but then you only had so many plays per day, and you had to pay for extra.
Yeah, it was something like that. I forget the exact business model for
But
that.
it was whatever. It was a disgusting model, though. It was a horrible one.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the problem with rhythm games, I think, if you're using licensed popular music in general, is that you are going to get crushed. You're going to get crushed with licensing fees.
Yeah.
And especially these days, it used to be that if you wanted, you could make a game that just analyzed music files, like AudioSurf. AudioSurf's amazing. Anyone who hasn't played it needs to go back and play AudioSurf or AudioSurf 2, even though the game's pretty old now.
Assuming you have some MP3s on your computer.
But you need MP3s. Yeah, you need MP3s to play AudioSurf. But you can put any MP3 you want into AudioSurf, which is awesome. And you can't really do that these days because people don't download MP3s as much. People mostly just stream stuff, which means you're at the whims of having to pay licensing fees, and you're just going to get killed on licensing fees. Yeah. So I think
at the time it came out, though, AudioSurf worked.
Oh, AudioSurf worked great. I mean, I assume it still works great. MP3s are still around.
Yeah. And something that was the case for, Rock Band and stuff like that when it came out, because that was still really before, music streaming really took off, is that a band having a song in those games boosted the sales of those songs a ton, especially for indie bands.
Yeah.
Heck, I can think of, there's so much music that I discovered because of those games.
Yeah.
So I think that at the time there was maybe an argument to be made to have the license fees not be that exorbitant, because it's just this is such a good platform to show people music that maybe they were able to negotiate that down a little bit.
Yeah. But if you're trying to keep something alive for the long term, I think that it's definitely a struggle. And even games that technically support it, they mostly don't want to. Beat Saber, I love Beat Saber, super cool game, VR rhythm game. It fits VR really well, and it works really well for a rhythm game. And you can actually, if you have a third-party kind of mod installer, you can actually put arbitrary music into Beat Saber. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than AudioSurf, because with AudioSurf, the game itself analyzed tracks to generate the kind of blocks that you would collect for puzzle mode or whatever. Whereas in Beat Saber, the kind of blocks that you hit have to be manually created. But there are third-party tools that people can use to create the block layouts for Beat Saber. And so a lot of popular music, basically anything that's reasonably popular, pretty much any band that I've looked up that isn't super small usually has at least a few songs in Beat Saber when you look at the third-party stuff. But the actual official stuff from Beat Saber is like way more restrictive because it's just a licensing issue. Like, and of course, you have to pay someone to generate the patterns.
Well, that's the thing. Is that like the official stuff is way better content than that third-party stuff. Like,
it is way better, yeah.
Because some of these third-party ones, there's only one difficulty that is insane. Because I think obviously the people that are making the content for this game love the game and are way better at the game probably than most people.
Yeah, anyone willing to go and create third-party mods for Beat Saber is probably pretty good at the game, and so there's a definite lack of easier modes I've noticed.
I need to pick up the Steam version of Beat Saber so I can just connect my Quest and just put mod tracks into the Steam version instead of messing around with the Quest.
No, the developers of Beat Saber, I don't know if it's that they just don't care at all about the modding community or if they actively dislike it, but basically every single update breaks it, and they update Beat Saber like pretty frequently with not just bug fixes, but also they do have DLC every it seems like every few months they'll release like a new album from an artist that you can download. That you pay to download.
Earlier this year, I went on and I was surprised to see, there's a Queen pack now.
Yeah, but literally, like almost every update, if not every update to Beat Saber, breaks all the mods. And so if you do use modded content, you basically kind of either are constantly fiddling with annoying like uninstall, reinstall, third-party mod bullshit, or you're just like setting your game to never update.
One thing that I want to backtrack on, speaking of that Guitar Hero game, it was Guitar Hero Live, and it did have a small amount of songs that you didn't have to do that like pay to play stuff. There was some included on the disc. It was like a rotating track of like potential like DLC songs and stuff like that.
Okay.
And they also did something interesting where it was like you can purchase a 24-hour pass. So if you were having a rock band night and you want access to absolutely everything because not everybody's gonna have the same music tastes, come to a party, you can just purchase 1 day pass to just access all the content, which I honestly don't think is that bad because that is a use case.
I think that's a cool idea. Yeah.
As much as people begrudge microtransactions, that's not nearly the worst use of them.
Yeah, I think when it comes to a rhythm game where the actual music artist has of course an interest in being paid because their music is being played, and the game developer has to spend a bunch of time making the rhythm tracks that you're actually hitting, and seeing kind of the quality of some of the third-party things for these games. I get it. It's a lot of work to put that together. So, and even a game like Audio Surf, I loved Audio Surf, but it didn't always do because it was just an algorithmically generated thing. It didn't always do the best job at matching the actual rhythm of the music.
At times, no, and there was specific weird things where certain songs just had a ton of those white blocks that needed to bring to the bottom of the well to clear. Some of them had way more of those than others, and so for the few achievements that were in the game, who would recommend certain songs that had a bunch of those to clear certain achievements that involved getting a ton of white blocks and stuff like that. So
I mean that's just, you're inherently going to have challenges trying to do something algorithmically like that. So I don't know. It's having to purchase music for your rhythm game, that's some of the least offensive DLC to me.
That being said, I'm not putting Activision off the hook here for that, because the amount of songs that they shipped in their full price game was way less than they had shipped in their full price other Guitar Hero games. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the main thing is the cost reasonable? I mean, when you consider the amount of sales and the amount of money that their costs would be essentially for licensing and paying for the tracks to be produced, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we want $20 for one album of 10 songs, and you have no choice to buy them individually if you only want a few of them. It's like, that's pretty steep.
Yeah.
And I think
it has
some
to be
of
a really good album.
yeah, but
because I'll tell you, I'm not the biggest album listener when it comes to music. Like, there's a lot of my favorite albums have, like, 3 or 4 tracks. I'm like, I don't even like this song.
Yeah,
it's like, fine, whatever.
Well, and
I'm an album listener.
when I bring that up, because I think that's the way that the Beat Saber model works, and I think Beat Saber is probably one of the most popular current rhythm games that's like still selling DLC. And the way they price it is, it's like, this artist has released a Beat Saber collection, and you buy all of them regardless of whether you want them all or not, and it's like $20. It's like $20. I think it's like $15-$20.
It ranges like 12 to 20ish.
It depends on the artist.
And even then, sometimes they'll go back and add more tracks for that artist that you then have to buy.
Like a volume 2 pack or something?
No, they kind of just add it in, and then you can just buy them at a reduced cost if you've already got the other one.
Yeah, but it feels pretty steep.
Yeah. And well, actually, I don't know if you guys know what Just Dance does now.
Pandas? I don't know.
They've just got it's just one application now, and
right.
it's just yearly updates now, like a yearly pass essentially you can buy to get all the new stuff, which I think is kind of a good way to go with a rhythm-based game.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that if they're producing enough stuff to be worth it. Again, like, that's the thing. I actually think that this is one of those cases where there's a legitimate reason for ongoing costs. I just think that sometimes it's a bit steeply priced.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then we're also talking about, like, Beat Saber's a VR game. VR is just a niche market. And there's not actually a lot of users.
And then with those prices, we're also looking at the conversion to Canadian dollars as well.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
I want to get Persona 5 Tactica. Do I want to spend $80 for it, or if I want the DLC, $103?
I've made my peace with the $80 price tag. I hate that I've made my peace, but I have.
Yeah, well, Nintendo kept making games, and that here's the thing. They're never going to go on sale, so you have to. It's either $80 or you don't get to play the game.
Oh man!
And that's why I'm glad that, they didn't take it away in other regions, but they did in North America. I'm glad they brought back the vouchers.
Yeah, so you get a little bit of a discount.
You buy the 2 vouchers for, I forget what the price is, but it's less than buying 2 full price games.
Yeah, I think it's like
$40.
Like, you get a $10 discount on each of the games or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I saved even more because I bought 2 vouchers earlier this year. I used one of them on Tears of the Kingdom, which is a $90 game.
Yep.
And then the other on Mario Wonder.
All right, so
it's a Fortnite.
I think I'm done with Fortnite now, but
actually, I'll just jump in. So since we're on the Switch train here, I actually also got Mario Wonder and beat it. And I know you talked about it a little bit. You've played it. Now I've played it.
But you mostly played co-op?
Yeah, pretty much played co-op with April. I liked it. I think that now, obviously, co-op's definitely a bit easier for the most part.
Yeah, how are those timing-based levels?
Oh my god! There are some levels that trying to play co-op. Oh no! Especially in the special world.
Yep.
Oh man. I think
overall, there's not too much to the difficulty of the game, but in some of those levels, I can see co-op just adding the difficulty.
Oh yeah. There's a few levels where trying to play with more than one player definitely makes it harder, and there were a few where we're like, okay, I'm just gonna do this one on my own just so we can finish it.
Oh no.
And okay, I have to say, there is exactly one level in the game that I really loved it, and I feel like it's way out of proportion with the entirety of the rest of the game. I don't know if you felt that way in the special world.
Is it the final?
No, although the final 2 copy It's the fact that a level has actually got final in it. I was like, that's really funny.
Well, because you had to 100% everything else to unlock it.
Yeah. Okay. That level is definitely more difficult than a lot of other levels, but it's the final level, so that's fair.
Yeah.
But no, it was the timing challenge with the wall jumping.
Oh, okay.
I just got crushed. I got crushed on that one, and part of the problem was that because we were doing it co-op, as soon as even if one of us died, it would be like the camera would shift, and the camera shift wrecked my timing.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know. It took us a lot of tries to get past that one. Maybe it was because we were trying to do co-op, and it was just harder with two people. But I felt like that level was way harder than everything else in the game.
Yeah, even solo, it took me a little bit. It's like, okay, no, I'm definitely going too slow. Okay, now I'm going too fast.
Oh, that's what was so tricky about it, is that you couldn't... the timing was such that if you went as fast as possible, you died, and if you went slower than necessary, you died.
Yeah, especially when you get to when
end.
it really starts getting fast, because the timing is it's increasing as it goes. At the end there, you kind of have to be perfect on the timing.
Yeah, basically it's like there's a section where you have to be a bit slower than it, and then you just have to get the timing right to shift into going as fast as possible and getting the timing down perfect, and it's just so on the I don't know.
I'm thankful that grabbing the big purple coins stays even after you die.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you don't exit the level.
Oh, man. Yeah. Having to get... that would be extremely tough to get all the purple coins in one run.
And maintain the timing.
Yeah. So, yeah. That being said, super fun level. And actually, I would say that it was just a really pure platforming level, which I liked. And actually, that was my biggest complaint about Mario Wonder overall, is that they're constantly introducing kind of single level gimmicks and stuff like that, to the point where I feel like there weren't actually many levels that were just pure platforming. Which was actually kind of I was like, huh, this is...
That's always the thing that I think Mario has done well, is the gimmick levels. But this one just has too many.
Every level has a Wonder Seed, and every Wonder Seed is a gimmick. A lot of them are good. A lot of them are really good gimmicks, and pretty fun.
The second level might still just be my favorite.
Da, 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 da.
All right.
Piranha Plant musical.
Piranha Plant.
So good.
Okay.
It's great. It's great.
It's a great set piece.
Yeah. So... yeah, I liked it a lot. I feel like, probably, playing single player definitely would be a bit more challenging, and that's one of the things when I'm trying to compare its difficulty to some of the more classic ones. I'm like, I mean, it would be more in line if I wasn't playing co-op. The elephant's pretty cool. I like the elephant, but yeah. So
You're big. You can knock stuff in front of you with your trunk, and you can use your trunk to store water and shoot it out later.
Yeah, I liked it, and
oh no, they brought back Flood.
Living Flood. No, Flood was cool. I think Mario Sunshine got too much hate. That being said, it got hate for the same reason that I'm complaining about right now, which is that it turned into Flood game instead of pure platforming.
I think I'm pretty sure the reason I ended up disliking Sunshine so much was because I went for the 100%.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like if I played it again and just played it to beating the game, not 100%, I'd enjoy it more.
Yeah, there was some bullshit in Sunshine. But also, yeah, Sunshine was more like a puzzle platformer than a platformer because of Flood.
Yeah, there were a couple other things I played as well. I checked out a bit of Checkmate Showdown.
Oh yeah,
which is
I watched you play around with that. That's an interesting little game.
It's a chess fighting game.
Okay.
So basically, the way it works
is this the video game equivalent of chess boxing?
Pretty much.
Yeah. But the way it works is, I mean, you're presented a chessboard. You've got all your pieces. The pawns function normally, the way they would normally. But all your back row pieces are also fighting game characters. So if, say for example, you move your rook to take their bishop, it becomes a fighting game between the rook and the bishop.
Oh, yeah, okay, I've seen this.
But the defender could actually win, and then the attacker's piece gets taken. But then they'll have diminished health. Their diminished health stays. But the pawns are powerful in their own way in that they can just take one of those pieces without having to enter a fight. And obviously, like, the king's the most powerful piece on the board. So you can be in a checkmate situation and defend yourself.
Yeah, it's weird because there's like chess positions that literally can't happen because of this game. Because like if you get put in check, like you're not actually required to like move your king, right? Obviously,
No.
because the game ends when the king is defeated in combat, so the king piece needs to be able to be taken at points. So it's just like.
But the fighting in it's pretty simple, which I think is probably the best way to go about in this thing, because you're kind of trying to blend chess and a fighting game, so like making it easier to pick up for people who don't necessarily play fighting games but play chess. So it's pretty the characters are pretty simple, and they have they don't have motion inputs. It's just directional inputs for their moves, which I think is a good choice. But yeah, no, it's pretty fun. I don't know that there's very many people playing it now, though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I mean, I feel like you've already substantially narrowed the audience, and then you've got all the classic problems with online games, fighting games in particular, at retaining an audience. So, yeah.
I mean, the chess portion of it, like, apart from the pawn play, it's not really that important, honestly. Like,
you
like,
can brute force your way across the board and just take your
Yeah.
pieces if you're
like
good enough.
the one thing that I guess matters is that like if you get into a fight, like if you try to take a piece and there you have another piece that could also like try and take that piece, that character comes in as an assist, and then you can call them to assist, and that seems pretty powerful. But other than that, like, there were multiple times when I saw you playing where the defender just won. So
Yeah.
it's like, it doesn't really matter if you, like, perform, like, an expert move to, like, threaten, like, two pieces at the same time with your knight or whatever, and then they, like, move a piece, and then you go attack the other piece, and then your knight just dies. Like, it's interesting, but
It's a very fun concept. But it is actually made in collaboration with chess.com to try and find,
that's hilarious.
try and
Oh, really?
find
Yeah.
that balance
Wow. Okay.
between the two genres.
I mean, that's about the best you could possibly hope for then, in terms of like retaining your audience. Like, do you still get a chess rating, like an ELO rating?
I don't think so.
I want to see.
I think there's probably, like, matchmaking ELO behind the scenes.
I mean, I'm sure there is behind the scenes, but it would just be funny if it just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
had the same chess ELO.
Yeah.
I never did any ranked. I just did like a little bit of just public matchmaking. But yeah, no, it's simple but fun. So
I mean, I feel like chess is just like, there's been so many like just silly like chess concepts that people have made, like, and I don't think it's gonna stop.
I still want to check out 5D chess.
5D multiverse chess with time travel.
Yep.
Yeah, we need to play that sometime.
Yeah.
Moving
I need
on.
to go back and play Shotgun King. It's had some major updates since I last played it.
Is it 1.0 yet?
I don't know. Maybe.
Possibly. I got it free from Twitch Prime. It must be out. I don't know. Yeah, so something else I checked out was Dredge. So Dredge is so this was actually nominated for Best Indie and Best Debut Indie at the Game Awards.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't win either, but
It's an honor to be nominated.
it's an honor. Like I saw some people complaining about because like I don't know, it just kind of sucked me in. Okay, to start off, it's a fishing game basically.
Mm-hmm.
You control a little fishing boat, and you're just going around spots, fishing, dredging up stuff from the bottom of the sea floor, and like as you like travel and fish, time passes, and once it starts getting dark, that's when your sanity starts kind of slipping.
Okay, so love crafting and fishing then?
And then you start seeing eldritch horrors. You can even fish up like aberrations, which are just like these eldritch like variations of every type of fish. But surprisingly, despite the horrors, it's surprisingly a chill game. Especially there is actually a mode that allows you to enable passive mode, so those horrors won't actually attack you, but they'll be there, so you're still seeing them, and then you can just have it be a fun, just calm eldritch fishing experience. But as you play, you can get upgrades to your ship. You have a grid-based storage system for your ship.
Nice.
And you can expand that, and then certain slots they're not dedicated to equipment. Like, you can store stuff in there, but there are certain slots in there that, okay, these are for holding this type of equipment, but you can also, if you're not using up all those slots, you can also just store stuff there. So you can also upgrade the number of those specific storage slots as well, and eventually get like a pretty fast ship. The ship starts out really slow. So like you're not going too far, but there's basically you've got like 5 areas in the game, all kind of separated by a bit of the vastness of the ocean. And they did actually recently drop their first DLC, which added a new area. That was all right. It was like $7 for like maybe about 2 hours of my time.
All right.
So, like, all right. But yeah, no, like if you're looking for like a fun little fishing game that's kind of repetitive, which is what I saw some people complaining about. But I mean, it's a fishing game.
Yeah, you know what's like, repetitive? Fishing.
Yeah, if you're playing a fishing game, you're kind of expecting repetitiveness. But yeah, and there's a bunch of little like side missions. You can encounter characters, and they'll have you do side missions for them. And there's an overall main quest where you're collecting these 5 artifacts, or 4 artifacts. No, it is 5. It is 5. And then there's like a couple different kind of biomes. Like the area you start with, it's just like a little couple islands, like right in the middle of the map. Then you've got like an area which is like very cliff-like. One place that's like a little more tropical, and there's like this giant kraken under the surface, and if you sail over it, it'll try to actually whack at your ship. There's like a swamp area and a volcanic area, and then the DLC added a Arctic area. And there's like a ton of different varieties of fish to catch, but it's a fun little indie game. I enjoyed it very much.
Nice.
Cool.
I've also been...
I'm just thinking like fishing chess. How does it work?
But Spider-Man 2 came out, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I've not been playing that because I don't have a PS5. But to avoid the Spider-Man itch, I have been playing Spider-Man Remastered on PC. Which is it's just a graphically enhanced version of the PS4 version with all the DLC included, pretty much, and some additional suits you can change into. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just been replaying that just to scratch that web-swinging itch to keep me from
buying a PS5.
Dude,
yes. I was like, oh, Final Fantasy 16, it's been kind of out for a while. I wonder when the PSC port is finally coming. It's like, oh, it's probably not coming for a while.
Yeah, it was like a year and a half for FF7 remake.
Yeah, it's just like, oh no. I can't spend like $650 on a console just to play Final Fantasy 16. I can't justify it, man.
There is a Sony game that will get me to drop that money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And that's if they do a Bloodborne sequel or remaster that doesn't come to PC.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's Spider-Man. I mean, I haven't really talked about it on here before, I don't think.
No.
I mean, it's got fantastic web swinging.
Number one bullet point of what you want in a Spider-Man game.
Yep.
Well, we talked about this too. Like, that's what you want in an open world game. Okay?
Good movement.
Good traversal. If the traversal is fun, the game will have a much easier time being good.
I have only fast traveled 5 times. One is because there's an instance in the game where it's like, it forces you to fast travel back to Peter's apartment to see him getting evicted.
Okay, well, of course, yeah. Hey, you know,
Fun brand.
sometimes you gotta get back home pretty fast. So
The other 4 times is because there's an achievement tied with fast traveling 5 times.
But that's not an achievement.
I know.
Oh, God damn it.
Actually, and I was actually kind of
see, and I would be like, make an achievement, beat the game, no fast travel.
So
Yeah, that'd be a badge of honor to not have that
Yeah.
achievement.
Exactly.
But outside of those, I haven't fast traveled at all. But there is actually something fun that they do with the fast traveling, though, which is off by default in the remastered, I guess because it doesn't need the long loading times that it did originally on the PS4. And that's when you would fast travel, you'd get these cutscenes of Spider-Man just on the subway.
Yeah.
All right, that's
Like, and there was a handful of different ones you could see too, but it's like they turn those off by default in the remastered. You can turn them back on; they're still there.
I mean, if it was essentially just to hide loading times, then I guess I could see that.
But I still think that's a fun little thing, just like seeing Spider-Man take the subway.
Still in the suit?
Yep.
Oh my god.
Still in the suit.
See, that'd be funny though to just like, because the loading times aren't necessary, but just like randomly every 1 in 10 fast travels or whatever, just like you randomly get one, so you don't know. That'd be funny. Is he ever just on the ceiling?
I think so.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That'd be good. It's just just gives you the subway. Sometimes he's just standing around. Sometimes he's on the ceiling. Sometimes he's on the roof.
New York Transit's so good that even superheroes will take it.
So fast.
Well, there is one cutscene where he's just sitting there on the subway next to another guy just in a Spider-Man suit. But yeah, no, this
Spider-Con. Whole train of Spider-Man.
This game though, it's like early on in the podcast, you guys did your top 15 games, and I've been struggling with figuring out mine because I want to do my top 15 at some point.
Yeah, totally.
This game is definitely on there for me. It's a fantastic game. It feels great to play. The combat's great. It subscribes to the Arkham style of combat, where you kind of build your combos and then you get the finishers.
Okay, but let's take a step back. How you played Spider-Man 2, GameCube, Xbox era?
Yes.
PS2 era. So is it like that? Because that predates Arkham.
Oh, it's been so long since. Did it play like that?
It kind of did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. But yeah, obviously, the combat's a lot more flashy than Batman because you've got. Your web shit. You jumping around, web swinging around.
Some of the Batman combat gets surprisingly flashy.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the things some people complained about. They're like, Batman wouldn't fight like this.
But you're Spider-Man, so obviously it's a lot more acrobatic too.
Yeah.
But yeah, combat's great. Web swinging's great. The story in this game is phenomenal, and I saw a lot of people when the game originally came out saying that. And I have to agree that it's and some of this is from people who have read a bunch of comics and stuff too, that this is probably their favorite Spider-Man story. And it's a completely original story. What I like is picks up where, like, I think he's been Spider-Man at this point for like a decade, pretty much.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Like, you're not like, this is an established Spider-Man, kind of like how the Arkham, like, this is an established Batman.
Well, I think, you know, when you're trying to tell an original story of one of these well-known superhero characters, just we know.
Yeah,
you don't need to do another
story
origin story.
again.
People are we've seen it enough.
Unless you're gonna do something actually new and different, like Into the Spider-Verse did with its Miles Morales origin story, which was even like quite a bit different than what Miles Morales was in the comics. Like, they really did their own kind of unique spin, not just on Spider-Man, but even on Miles Morales. They kind of.
Well, that's one like.
So, like, unless you're going to do something
DLC for this Spider-Man was the Miles Morales stuff,
Yeah,
right?
it was a.
It was like a separate game.
Wasn't full. It wasn't full price. It was a reduced price, but basically and it's not as long, but it's kind of like ODST to Halo 3, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the idea there was like, it was like standalone DLC.
But
the idea there was that they wanted a big game for the launch of the PS5, and that's what like the big game was.
Yeah.
Other than the Demon's Souls remake.
And if you got Miles Morales on PS5, you also got Remastered free. But yeah, no, like, this game, it's a bit in, like, Miles is introduced as a character, and it starts setting him up too, and then, like, obviously the follow-up is his standalone game. But yeah, no, like, it's just...
Yeah, and I've seen a bit of Spider-Man 2, the new Spider-Man 2, and it looks like they have both.
Yeah, you
and
do
Miles
get to play as both of them.
Working together.
But yeah, no, like, this game's great. I love it. And playing the remaster. The only thing I'm not the biggest fan of on the remaster is, for whatever reason, they decided to change up how Peter looks.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
I don't necessarily think it looks bad. Like, he looks like a cross between Tom Holland and Scott the Woz.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't necessarily think it looks bad, but I think I like the old one better. Like, he didn't have the best facial model, but I think it looked good for, like, being like a late 20s, been Spider-Man for a decade.
Right, so they gave him too much of a baby.
Tired.
They gave him too much of a baby face.
Too much of a baby face.
Yeah.
Okay, just retcon it, like the spider venom. It keeps him, his skin young and whatever.
But yeah, no, it's like Peter Parker, a decade into being Spider-Man, he should look tired.
Like youth pastor Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like a variety of different costumes you can use in this game. Like, you've got like all the other movie costumes you can switch to.
There's only one costume you should use though, and that's the Spider-Verse one.
Looks so cool. I want 1960s animated Spider-Man.
Actually, there is a cel-shaded suit that looks like that's made to look like original comic Spider-Man. And each, not all suits, but like a lot of the ones you can unlock in-game, each have like a unique ability you can equip. Like the default one, which is kind of what I've been playing with mostly, is when you activate it, it just generates focus meter, which the focus meter is what you can use to either heal or do like just a finisher. So that's handy to just be able to generate some more. But one of them is just, for that like animated or like that comic looking one, it's just quips. You activate it and he just says a quip.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Not to say that like he doesn't, like, there's obviously quips in there too, like as you're just playing the game. Like it's great, but it's like more quips.
Oh man, is there any quip as good as OG Spider-Man 2? It's like, hey, shocker! You've been reupholstered.
That line's great. I also love Mysterio. I think I had a bowl of Mysterios for breakfast.
Spider-Man's got the best quips.
Yeah.
This is a total side note, but I still can't believe I fucking got so hard on Mysterio, MCU Mysterio. It totally got me. I was like, he's a hero now? This is such a weird take on Mysterio.
Yeah,
Whoa.
like, I wasn't sure. Okay. Is he going to be the villain like everyone expects? Or are they actually doing... I can't tell.
I know. It went on just long enough for me to be like, I guess he's the hero. I got Mysterio'd.
But I do have to say this. I do really like Yuri Lowenthal as Peter Parker. Spider-Man. Like, I know you have trouble separating him from Yosuke.
Yeah, well, it's weird. So, like, the little bits of, like, trailers and stuff that they showed for... Or not trailers, like the little bits of gameplay that they show for like the interstitial nomination parts of the Game Awards, like he sounded a little bit less like Yuri Lowenthal in those to me than he did in Marvel's Midnight Suns, which was weird. I don't know. So,
and there's one
different voice direction. I don't know, man.
There is something this game does that I really like, and it's like, I don't know if Peter's a bit of a masochist or something, but he's subscribed to J. Jonah Jameson's podcast, so every so often when you're swinging around, just like a little episode of his podcast will start playing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That is great.
But yeah, no, that game's fantastic.
I also love this switch. Just like newspapers are dead. JJ's a podcast, like crazy podcast host now. It's perfect.
I mean, the Daily Bugle's still a thing in the game. MJ works for them, but like I guess JJ was just forced out or something.
I mean, like JJ's character makes sense as a deranged podcast host.
Yes.
Yeah, just the conspiracy nut.
Yeah. Like it totally matches the character.
And like every one of those little podcast clips that comes up is just gold. Like there's one. Like, at one point in the game, there's, like, a little side quest for a character where you're chasing down his pigeons, and yeah, you're swinging after pigeons. And then later on, an episode of JJ's podcast will come up where he's just like, some spiders eat... Spider-Man has been seen chasing pigeons. Now, some species of spiders eat birds. So, therefore, Spider-Man eats pigeons.
If P then Q, perfect logic as far as I can see.
But yeah, But moving on from that, like, though I do think the game's fantastic. But outside of that, I've also checked out a bit of the first DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Mm-hmm. Bit of a tone change here.
Yeah.
I haven't completed it, but it's a smaller open area, and it runs consistently worse.
Yeah.
Like,
good job.
So wild to me.
Like, if there's so much as a blade of grass, you're encountering slowdown. It's not great performance-wise, and I got to something last night. There's this mini game where your objective is to collect. You're supposed to ride your Pokemon into these balloons, and when you pop the balloons, you get a berry. And then there's these points at the middle of the map where you deposit the berries, and you need a certain amount of each of the 4 types of berries. But as soon as you start depositing some hungry Pokemon will start coming out, and they'll move over to start eating those berries. So you got to be quick. And there's 3 difficulties. Easy is no problem. Normal, from what I've seen, is completable, but from the people who have completed it, just barely.
Huh.
Normal or hard is impossible solo.
Oh, wow.
And you can do this mode in co-op, but unlike Raids, there's no matchmaking, so you actually have to have 3 other people with the game in DLC.
Oh, boy.
And apparently, even then, hard, you need the 4 players.
Wow.
Like, it's not a well-designed mode. And if you complete hard, you get shiny Munchlax out of it. But it's like,
Okay, does everyone get it, or does only one player?
Everyone.
All right, because I was gonna say if only one player gets the
Or
Munchlax.
like the best person gets it. Everybody else gets a regular Munchlax.
But like, if you're gonna have a mode like this, it should at least it should be completable in solo. Like, there's no reason.
Does it just not have difficulty scaling for the number of players at all?
It does. Like, the berry requirements are more in co-op, but the berry requirements in solo are still impossible. While the entire time you're also dealing with slowdown and the game running at a snail's pace. Your 90-second timer to do it is more than 90 seconds because of the slowdown, but it's still impossible.
Jeez.
Yeah. Not...
That's rough.
Yeah. And then I think the second part actually comes out this week, I think. So I'll be finishing up Teal Mask and then moving on to the second part.
The Indigo Not Plateau.
Yeah. But yeah, not very great impressions. I was intending on kind of just filling out this whole Pokedex, just like going around catching and evolving everything. But then with how the slowdown was going, I was like, no, I'm just transferring everything I need to fill out the Pokedex from home and just filling out that Pokedex. So I just have to finish playing the story and catch the new mythicals or legendaries or whatever.
Yeah, those weirdos. I don't like how they look. Everyone looks okay. I mean, the rest don't look weird to me.
The trio is a bunch of shitters.
Yeah.
Good to see Scarlet and Violet's continuing its general failure.
I hope they bring Monolith Soft on for the next one. Well, I mean, supposedly then by that time the next one should be on new hardware.
We'll see.
So that it can look worse? I mean,
look better, run the same.
Like I spent all their development time like retexturing every Pokemon again.
Yeah, that's it for me.
So, Alex, have you been playing anything of note?
Yeah, there's a couple other games I've played that are new recently. We'll start with the new, in quotes, game, Risk of Rain Returns, which is a remake of Risk of Rain. And me and Santo have played it.
I've played about 2-3 hours.
Yeah. Played a bit too. Okay.
Enough that you can't refund it. Yeah. That's how much I've played.
Have you played the first game? Original?
Yes.
I
actually prefer 2D Risk of Rain, honestly.
Okay. Broadly speaking, I would say that it's still Risk of Rain.
Yeah.
And they've just brought in a few of the sort of new items as well as a couple of the mechanical changes from Risk of Rain 2 back into the first game. And it's pretty much all for the better as far as I'm concerned. The way that the teleporter mechanics work, being able to leave just after the timer and boss is dead is a much better way of the game functioning compared to the first game.
Where you had to make sure everything else in the level was dead before you could go to the next level.
Everything in the level that it spawned, which especially on large levels was just painful.
Trying to hunt down something that spawned in way back where you spawned.
Yeah.
And you just ran away from.
Yeah, and there's some levels where the enemies, actually most levels, the enemies just can't make it to you anyway. So it's really annoying. So that's much better. The graphics are slightly higher fidelity, and I'd say it does make it easier to see what's happening, although the game still turns into a bit of a chaotic mess.
Yeah.
At times. And I'd also say broadly the difficulty curve, and maybe this is related to the teleporter mechanics being a bit better, but the difficulty curve feels a lot more, it feels a lot smoother to me. One of the things that I really found happened a lot with Risk of Rain is that I would often just die because I was overwhelmed and it felt like I never had a chance.
Yeah.
Or I would get to a point where I was completely overpowered and I destroyed everything and I beat the game past the third level. I felt like there was very little challenge. So it was essentially you were kind of just relying on good RNG, and then once you got the good RNG, the game became trivial. That's what I felt like happened a lot in Risk of Rain. And now I feel like it's a lot smoother. It's a lot more like, oh yeah, I just was too slow, or I just wasn't playing well, or whatever. So I feel like the difficulty curve's been smoothed out in a way that benefits the game. And there's more characters and whatnot. So I haven't unlocked everybody, but it just feels like they learned a lot of the sort of lessons that they incorporated into Risk of Rain 2, which just brought them back. It's still the same game though, so
and they even added that little that new challenge mode.
Yeah, there's a challenge mode that's kind of cool. There's some cool challenges in there. There's there's a lot of movement ones. There's some that are sniper has a tower defense, not tower defense. Well, you're defending a tower, but it's like a sniping shooting gallery basically.
There's one that's actually just like a Castlevania reference.
Which one?
I forget the name. It's the guy who can have the whip, where he's just going through a stage that's kind of it's kind of set up like a Castlevania level because there's secrets hidden in the walls and that you can just hit with your whip.
One of my favorites is one where he plays a drone.
Oh yeah,
I hated that one.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Yeah, they're cool though. Yeah, I thought that's a neat little addition, and then it gives you an alternate way to unlock character abilities. There's usually an ability challenge, or you can meet some other condition for most of the weapon unlocks. So that's cool. That being said, I know Santo has complaints about the
I've
game.
got paragraphs.
You've got paragraphs about it, yeah.
Yeah, you say they incorporate a lot of lessons from Risk of Rain 2 and incorporate them into the original game, but I think the core of the original Risk of Rain is just so poor, in my opinion, that it's the expression of you polish a turd, still a turd, in my opinion. This reminds me a lot of the DS remake of the first Fire Emblem game, where they did a lot of things to make it more interesting. They introduced new mechanics, polished it up, gave it, first time it's released in English and all that. But this is the main thing same with Risk of Rain Returns, is that the map design was just so terrible in the first Fire Emblem game because it was the first one. And I think the maps in Returns still they're way too vertical for the amount of verticality that your characters can do. You can barely jump, and it feels like some of the platform just feels very frustrating unless you get Hapu Feather or whatever.
Yeah, well, and this is, I think, I agree with you actually. I think a lot of the levels are generally too vertical, and in particular, one of the challenges I think is that it feels like the levels are made more for certain characters and certain builds.
Totally, yeah.
Especially if you get a God mode run and you loop, the levels are fine, and in fact they seem to be quite well made for that. But that's sort of the problem, is that the levels are essentially made to have a lot more traversal options once you've got a build going. But the problem is that you don't have a build going until you've already kind of had a chance to get to the last level and you've chosen to loop instead. Especially because there are so many items and there's not that many extra Hapu Feathers, the extra jump, or the jetpack that reduces gravity and makes your jump able to clear larger gaps. Although there are some characters that have movement abilities that substantially open up opportunities.
Yeah, that's the thing. Some characters just felt really poor to play in this kind of setting. I think Commando feels terrible.
Commando,
and as well, the fact that a lot of characters they can pretty much only kind of deal damage in the plane that they're in. But there's flying enemies and enemies that can literally go through platforms, solid terrain to get to, the jellyfish. That it makes it just frustrating in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't have as much control over my character as I would want, and that's something that they fixed in Risk of Rain 2 by making it 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And having a third person free aim.
Yeah. Well, and you could totally have just directional free aim in Risk of Rain, but the problem with that is that it would change the game so much that it really would be unrecognizable. And maybe they should have done that. I don't know. Like, maybe they should have said, okay, we're not just going to remake this game. We're going to, make it free aim and redesign all the levels. Because the levels wouldn't work at all. The levels are very similar. They're, in many cases, almost the same as the first game. Which, again, it's fine. But it's very much a choice to do a remake rather than to incrementally make a big change. Because I kind of agree. Like, maybe free aim in any direction you want would have been nice. What I will say is that there's some characters where it doesn't matter. I especially really like the pilot, who is a new character to Risk of Rain Returns, and the pilot has an ability where he can kind of fire up at a 45-degree angle-ish. It seems like it kind of tracks enemies a little bit too. So if there's generally an enemy in your sort of fire cone, then it basically seems to just hit. Which I really like that character as well because it's got additional sort of targeting options, and it also has an additional movement option where you can kind of like jump up and float down, which I like a lot. And it also, you can shoot downwards at enemies on the ground.
So you really like the character that all their mechanics goes completely against the mechanics of this game.
I know.
Because they're a new character, so they're able to do that. Yeah, like, I mean, I didn't like the first game when we tried playing it. I thought maybe part of that was that the only time I ever played the first game was couch co-op, which is a terrible way to play that game. Like, I mean, say what you will, if you like the game or not, that's a terrible way to play it.
The way that the camera works, it really makes couch co-op a struggle.
Yeah, so like, I gave this a shot. I didn't really like it. That's fine. But honestly, my biggest problem with this game isn't the game itself. It's like a lot of the stuff around it to do with like the Risk of Rain IP that they're doing. Because like they're really treating Risk of Rain, like the franchise, as something like incredibly special. Like the 10-year anniversary documentary and like a bunch of other stuff. And it's just like, okay, this franchise has 2 games in it. It's like, okay, like I like, because Gearbox acquired the IP, and the impression I get is that they really want to expand it into like something bigger, but they haven't put in the legwork to do that yet. Like, if you want to come to me at like 15-year anniversary when they've released like, their mobile game, say whatever you will about that, and like, another DLC for Risk of Rain 2 and Risk of Rain Returns, and like maybe something else on the horizon, sure, maybe, but like to act like this is a like series with like a bunch of reverence is a bit off to me.
Yeah.
And like it's just like, you can't be doing that. But Gearbox, I think, have been terrible stewards of the IP as well. Like, the funniest thing happened, like if you go to the Risk of Rain 2 Steam page right now, it will say like, hey, nominate us for a Steam award, and the one that they chose for people to nominate is the Labor of Love Award, which is for like ongoing support for games. The last update to Risk of Rain 2 was in June of 2022. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
They did a patch like a month ago as like sort of a pseudo announcement for like the new DLC. And the patch notes was just a bunch of rain emojis. And all that patch seemed to do was reset my settings. It didn't fix any of the bugs. It didn't fix any of the bugs in the game. That there are bugs in the game that the last patch notes they did in June 2022 said, here are known issues that will be fixed in a patch upcoming in the next week or so. That patch never came. So like, and like Risk of Rain 1 never got proper multiplayer. It still had that awful like connect via IP shit.
Yeah.
Didn't get proper multiplayer until they re-released the game. So
yeah, because we tried to play original Risk of Rain in the lead up to Risk of Rain Returns being launched, just for kicks, and yeah, it was a bad experience because of we had to do direct IP connection, and we had to port forward and all this garbage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is what I would have been doing 15 years ago, sure.
10 years ago, but whatever. But so it's like,
no, 10 years ago it was already a bad system. That's
true.
Like,
so it's like, okay, well, so Gearbox I don't think has been great stewards of the IP. I don't think Hapu really, like, they haven't done enough work to the game ongoing.
I think Hapu from what I understand, Hapu took a big bag of cash and basically has pieced out.
But even then, like, they took that big bag of cash, like, a lot later. Like, the fact that Risk of Rain 1 never got a proper multiplayer is kind of weird, kind of wild to me.
So Hoppu's not working on 2 anymore? Is it Gearbox that's doing all the work now?
I'm a little unclear on it, and I think that is the way that Gearbox wants it to be. Because it is very unclear exactly who has been doing the work. Yeah. And from what I understand,
Gearbox did the development on the new stages from the last DLC as well as the new enemies. Like, it seems like they are like doing the continued development on Risk of Rain 2. But Hoppu is maybe like, I think maybe like Hoppu is the one that did Risk of Rain Returns or something like that. It's a weird like split where technically like Gearbox owns the IP and the development. It's responsibility for Risk of Rain 2, basically, but then other Risk of Rain stuff is Hoppu, but then they outsourced. I'm pretty sure they're outsourcing their mobile game they're making to a completely different studio too.
It looked like it.
So it's really unclear.
It kind of seems like what happened to me is essentially that Gearbox was like Hoppu made Risk of Rain 2, Gearbox published it. The game like way exceeded expectations in terms of sales numbers, and then Gearbox was like, oh wait, this thing's blowing up. And then negotiated to buy the IP, and then Hoppu has slowly been transferring development responsibility to Gearbox. The DLC seems to have been kind of a partnership where Hoppu and Gearbox worked on the DLC, and then it seems like going forward, the next DLC is just Gearbox.
That's what it seems like, but again, it's been a while since I've actually properly read the announcement that they made. The sale.
And they're intentionally being a bit cagey about it because I think in general the community does not trust Gearbox to do a good job with Risk of Rain.
Yeah, and like a lot of the they're like forward facing to the people is Hoppu, but they're not even the publishers of the game anymore. So it's weird.
Yeah, it almost seemed like a weird form of like PR damage control because I don't know. I don't know how like the internet has responded, but like making a mobile gacha-ish game, I'm already like, it's dead.
Yeah, that's the most established developer move.
Like
spin off that is in money making formula.
Like I'm definitely gonna buy Risk of Rain 2 DLC just because I love Risk of Rain 2 and I even just like
so good.
Yeah, even just like a couple more stages, maybe a character or two. I'm sure that'll like just if anything, just add more stuff to make runs more add variance to runs and add some interest and things like that. But I'm not expecting for there to be another great game in the series at this point. From Gearbox.
I probably won't even buy the next DLC. I put 40 hours into Risk of Rain 2, which is not an insignificant amount of time, but it just never hooked me.
That's wild.
And I actually get this like for a lot of roguelikes. The genre there's very few games in the genre that actually end up hooking me.
I'm the same. It's like we're the same but opposite. Where like I'm the same way, but the only one that's really hooked me is Risk of Rain 2. Whereas for you, it's Risk of Rain 1.
Well, even then, I wouldn't even say Risk of Rain 1's really hooked me. The only two roguelikes I can really think of that have hooked me are Hades and Cult of the Lamb.
Yeah, for me, it's Risk of Rain 2 and FTL. That's it.
I'd say FTL as well, and 20 minutes till dawn, just because of how. Here's the thing about Risk of Rain.
I don't think I would call 20 minutes a roguelike. Yeah,
I'd call it like a run-based game, but enough. Like I mean, the roguelike is such a hilariously stretched definition, anyways. But I don't think you could. So much of the like original.
I would say that
aspects of Rogue are not
20 minutes is more like a well-tuned twin stick shooter than anything else. To me, it's just that twin stick shooter is not like a genre that people talk about anymore.
Yeah,
because those like only really existed all that often in like arcades and stuff like that. Like I wouldn't call Geometry Wars a roguelike.
No.
Yeah, I think like the thing...
twin stick shooter with roguelike elements.
Sure.
I think the thing for me about Risk of Rain 2 is just like even Risk of Rain 1 is like Like, I'm always willing to give roguelikes a chance to just like maybe they will hook me. But like the big thing with Risk of Rain is like you can have runs going on for like 40 minutes, an hour, and then die, and then I just feel like my time was wasted.
Yep. That's the main reason why I don't like them.
Like, at least for Cult of the Lamb, like, even if I didn't finish the run I was on, like, I've still returned with something to, like, manage my cult and improve it. Like, the cult management is what drove me with that. And, like, with Hades, like, there's always, at the very least, there's always some new dialogue, and even after clearing the game 10 times and hitting the credits, like, there's still story threads for me to wrap up, and that keeps me coming back to Hades.
Yeah. One thing I will say I was surprised to not see in Risk of Rain Returns was Eclipse Mode. Because Eclipse Mode has added so much, like, playtime to Risk of Rain 2.
Yeah, so much, like, it single-handedly, like, extended the longevity of that game in a crazy way.
Yeah, because, like, that's the thing is, like, the game, I think the game loop in Risk of Rain 2 is, like, extremely well-tuned, but once you've unlocked all the characters, and you've unlocked all the items, and you've like, unlocked all the weapons, you kind of, like, don't have any more meta progression, except Eclipse Mode. And Eclipse Mode, if you want to beat it with every character, all the way up to level 8, it's
so many runs.
It's so many runs.
Like already, that's 8 runs per character. If you get it completed in one.
Yeah,
runs.
except also, you know, the Eclipse Mode is only available on the hardest difficulty, and to be honest, you basically have to get good RNG or be absolutely like incredibly skilled at the game, which you're only going to be able to get that skilled by playing the game a shitload anyway. So. Mm-hmm. Like, we have hundreds of hours, me and Santo.
Yes.
Like, mine's sitting at, like, 350 hours in Risk of Rain 2 or something.
Ultimately, I wouldn't say I dislike the game. I just don't find anything pulling me back to it.
Yeah, well, and, like,
that's fair.
And I think, like you said, you have, like, 40 hours, 50 hours in the game.
Yeah. It's not an insignificant amount of time.
That's still a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't hit that in most games. I only hit that in games that I really enjoy. And it's always funny when people are like, I spent 200 hours in this game sucks. I'm like, really?
Oh, I could do an episode of Destiny too.
So anyway, yeah, Risk of Rain Returns. I mean, I think that for anyone who liked Risk of Rain, the game is basically strictly better. But it's definitely a bit of a older style of 2D platforming shooter in the first place. And that may frustrate some players. Yeah. Moving on, another game I've played recently is Hardspace Shipbreaker. And this game is, I think its release date's a little weird because it was in early access for a while. Mm. But I think it's a really cool game. And it's by Blackbird Interactive.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, for viewers who aren't aware, Blackbird Interactive...
Listeners,
whatever you're...
they could be watching the YouTube version.
Watching the waveform.
Content consumers. Because that sounds appealing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, for those unaware, Blackbird Interactive is essentially the core developers from Relic Entertainment that made the original Homeworld and later Homeworld 2. And then they left because Relic got bought out, I think, and kind of like still exists, but it's not really the same company anymore. But Blackbird Interactive is kind of that original team that made the Homeworld games. And I love Homeworld, but I also really just love the aesthetic, the space aesthetic that they had there in those games. And I'm excited for Homeworld 3 when it eventually comes out. It's funny, it was supposed to come out this year, but it's been pushed back. That's okay. I'm still looking forward to it. And I'd rather that game get delayed. It's been so long since Homeworld 2. It's like, What's another year?
Like, the percentage of how long it's been since the last Homeworld is barely going to move with this delay.
It's not.
It can be your anticipated game for the year for our GUIs 2 years in a row.
It can
be. There we go.
It can be, yeah. So, but this is not a strategy game at all. It is essentially, the idea is that you are salvaging ships, and the plot, to the extent there is one, is essentially, so the game has one of the funniest openings that I've ever seen. It essentially walks you through a bunch of fake legalese. And like basically, you are basically signing away everything. Like you are essentially indenturing yourself into like slavery. And
property of the corporation.
Yeah. The very first thing that happens after you sign the documentation is essentially that you're murdered. Because there's sort of like in-game explanation for what happens when you die is that you are cloned, and then your clone continues your job. Anyway, you are like quintillions of credits in debt now.
Oh, great.
And your job is to salvage ships, and all of the salvage you get pays down your debt. The debt is comically large, and probably a lot of players of the game will never actually pay off the debt. So there is a bit of a story and some stuff around that. But so the meat and potatoes of the game is that you have these sort of like timed shifts, and your goal is to salvage as much of a ship as you can in the shift. And the way that works is that you're in a spacesuit and you're moving around in 3D, and you have sort of like a gravity gun almost. Like you can just pick up pieces of the ship, and if they're small enough, you can move them around, and you can kind of throw them around and stuff like that. You can attach them to each other. And some pieces get incinerated because they're metal. Some pieces get processed because they're made of like, I don't know, I can't remember. It's like silicone or whatever their sort of non-metal ship bulkhead pieces. And then other pieces get salvaged as a unit, so they get put on a barge. So that's things like light fixtures and like computers and things like that. And essentially, it's kind of like you have to disassemble the ship without destroying it into its constituent parts. And so there's like, metal bulkheads, carbon fiber nanocarbon, that's what they call them, nanocarbon bulkheads. And there's all these like, devices. And the game just slowly, so there's different ships. When you start out, the ship is essentially just like metal and nanocarbon. And you have a laser. And this is one of those things where it's like, kind of like, the parts of the ship are fully destructible, and you just like your laser can just like cut arbitrary just lines.
Because I was going to ask, are you like actually having like plasma cutter and just like cut out the pieces and everything?
So you got a laser cutter, and you like cut pieces apart. Problem is that when you cut a piece apart, you actually destroy some of the value of that piece because you just cut it, and so some of the material gets evaporated. But there are certain sections of the ship that are cut points that don't have any value. So if you want, you can go very slow and methodically and get nearly 100% of the value of the ship salvaged, but it will take you a long time. Or you can just YOLO like a madman, laze everything, and half destroy the ship and half salvage it really quickly. And then the game slowly introduces like new subsystems and new parts that have more value, but they have hazards. So there's like coolant that can freeze you, and this is where the game reminds me a little bit of Outer Wilds in that there are many ways to die in space. You can freeze yourself to death. You can burn to death. You can so your gravity gun thing that throws around massive ship parts. If you're not careful, you just impale yourself, and your helmet breaks, and you die to the vacuum of space. Although, if you manage to reach the terminal where you buy oxygen.
Oh, of course.
If you want fuel, if you want oxygen, you have to pay for it, and it goes onto your debt. Nothing is free. So you have to, if you make it back there, you can patch your suit. But there's a lot of just hazards that happen that are in the ship that can kill you. And so it's cool. So it's essentially, it's kind of like it's kind of like a puzzle game where you're trying to just maximize the amount of value that you can salvage by disassembling the ship
in the shortest amount of time.
And it's cool. And then different ship pieces, so there's like airlocks, and you open the airlock and you can like depressurize parts of the ship. Or you could just get your C4, blow open the ship, and explosively decompress everything. And a whole bunch of stuff will rapidly fall out of the ship, and you can get thrown around, and you can just, if explosive decompression happens and you are in a unfortunate location, you'll just get thrown against a wall and die.
Yeah.
And there's there's electric hazards. You can get electrocuted. There's like radiation. There's like nuclear reactors that power ships later on, and certain more elaborate components like the aforementioned nuclear reactor. Some of the larger ones, there's like a sequence of disassembling pieces so that it doesn't explode. Or you can just blow everything open. And if you salvage it fast enough, it doesn't matter that you didn't deactivate it with the shutdown sequence. Mm-hmm. So it's got a lot of like cool sort of, it's got a lot of cool things you can do with just playing that like risk versus reward, like kind of how do I maximize the value I get from this ship? And it supports you can go about that different ways. You can just destroy half the ship in the process, or you can go really slow. So it's cool.
This sounds right up my alley. You've piqued my interest.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, every time you get cloned when you die, does it add to your debt?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, they charge you quite. They at the end of every shift, it gives you basically a bill.
A full breakdown.
It gives you a breakdown of here's all the stuff you salvaged and how much you gained from it, and here's all the stuff that like you used and costs you money, how much air you use. Here's your air bill, and yeah, if you have to get cloned during a shift, that's a substantial bill. And also, actually, dying's really rough too because just of the timing, because then you have to like go back into the ship where you were, mm-hmm. and pick up where you left off, and that's a pretty serious hit to your productivity.
Oh, is the cloning like pretty immediate?
Yeah.
Okay.
It puts you through a short screen. It's funny actually. Every time you get cloned, the cloning procedure is activated with CMake.
Oh my god.
For you programmers out there. In the far future, we're still using CMake.
Oh, of course. Why would anybody change?
So yeah, it's a cool game. I mean, I think that, at some point, once you've unlocked kind of all the hazards, because there's different hazards and then there's different ships. So once you've kind of like unlocked all the ships and you've unlocked all the hazards, obviously it's going to be somewhat samey in a sense, but it's like the point is sort of like to just get better at optimizing your runs. You can't, especially once you have all the hazards, I don't know if you can actually salvage a whole ship in one shift. The shifts last 15 minutes each, and that's like a day, in-game day. And there's some meta progression with the story, and you're like stealing parts to make your own ship, and I haven't completed that part yet, but so I don't know what happens when you steal enough parts to complete your own personal ship, which is just like a small thing.
I hope you kind of just wake up as another clone and just take over. Just another clone just takes over.
Yeah,
that clone's gone, but another one's still working.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's really cool, and I think that it's one of those games. I think you probably have to have the right mindset to enjoy it, because it's very much like it's basically a puzzle game. It's basically a puzzle game with aggressive mechanics that make you feel like you need to keep like going quickly, but you don't actually have to, which I think I like a lot. Like you could take as many days to finish salvaging a ship as you want. It's just that, the game's just like, this cost you, you didn't like make enough money this shift, so you're not doing very well.
Want to know what it feels like to be under the time constraints of a Starfleet engineer?
Yeah.
Play this.
Yeah. So the game basically, like, it makes you feel like you need to go fast, but doesn't actually force you to, which I actually think is a good balance for sort of like a timed kind of puzzle optimizer like this. And then, so there's that aspect. And then there's also just that fact that, like, you are in a 0G full 3D environment, and, you have sort of like inertial controls. I feel like some people probably just do not want to play a game with controls like that. Like,
I'm sitting right here.
You're sitting right here. Yeah, but it's like kind of like with like I compared it a little bit to Outer Wilds, which also has sort of some like 0G kind of 3D environment traversal, and I think either you like operating a sort of weird jetpack thing with controls like that, or you don't. And it's definitely something I like it. I think it's cool. I very frequently find myself confused about which way is up. And like, I'm just like, man, where's the barge? I'm trying to throw this nuclear reactor out of a ship before it explodes. And I'm like, which direction am I going?
Okay, I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on
Yeah.
the Steam Winter Sale's coming up soon. So.
Yeah, and then it's fun, kind of like the first time a nuclear reactor blew up on me, and then I got cloned, and then I went back, and I'm like, it didn't completely like destroy the whole ship, which I was kind of surprised. I was expecting maybe a bit more destruction, but it's also just like it was sort of fun in a way, because like trying to salvage a ship after a massive explosion, it's a complete mess. It's extremely difficult to really get any value out of a ship after a large explosion, because there's a lot of the paneling, like your laser only cuts certain materials, but large explosions damage everything, and there's just like small debris all over the place. It's hard to even pick up the right thing. Like, you'll try to pick up a piece of like bulkhead, and instead it's like, there's just like shrapnel everywhere floating in space. Like, I can't get anything. And so it's like, it's kind of fun in a way, in like, oh man, like I really screwed this one up, and now it's so hard to make it work. And then you're just like, you know what? Fuck it. I abandon this pile of garbage, and I'm gonna disassemble a new ship. So it's very fun. It's a very unique concept. Like, I can't say, like, it's just, it doesn't really cleanly fit into any particular genre. Like, it's a first person like 3D space ship disassembly game.
Yeah, like, it's messed up that the game, when you're describing it, that it makes me think the most of is Papers, Please. Because it's like a time-based thing where you need to try to make more money than your ongoing costs go. And if you like rush things, you get penalized by either like blowing up, or in Papers, Please, getting fined for letting people through that shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like that. Or you can go slow, but then maybe you don't make enough. Like, it's weird that that's like kind of the same concept in two wildly different settings.
Yeah.
And like, controls.
Yeah. And so it's funny because, like, on the one hand, the game really has this sort of like oppressive corporate slave sort of thing going on, but at the same time, it's sort of like just like chill, just chill, floating through a spaceship, like disassembling pieces, and just like it's got this weird thing going on. A few other games I feel like do this too, but it's got this weird kind of like Zen relaxation thing at the same time as this just like oppressive corporatocracy.
Oh, great. That says bad things.
It's not the first time I've like seen a game with that concept where you're buying your way out of a huge debt like that. Like, I think there's a Vita game that's...
Yeah, I've also played Animal Crossing.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a Vita game that the name of it escapes me right now, but it's basically a Monster Hunter like, and you're basically hunting stuff to reduce your ridiculous prison sentence.
Yeah, I haven't spent much time looking at so there's also leaderboards, and I think there's like some stuff where, you know, obviously just like competing to just like get the most value in the minimum time, like as a on the leaderboards. That's something that's
a very corporate way to
but I haven't spent time looking into like any YouTube videos about like people that are actually good at the game just like going crazy fast, but I can imagine it would be kind of interesting to watch some of the, like, I guess speed runs in a sense of the game.
See how people go about breaking down the ships exactly.
Yeah, because like it's definitely the sort of thing where I could see some absolute bullshit being pulled.
Yeah, like you boot up a speed run and they're like constantly like inert, like when they're like, you know, thrust, like where they're constantly going like backwards or something weird like that, like bunny hopping in Half-Life. Yeah. I want to see that kind of stuff where it's like very strange movement, but in like 3D space.
Yeah.
with inertia.
Yeah. Well, I'm also just thinking like, you know, I could just imagine like, somebody doing like a really complicated kind of like really silly ship disassembly where maybe they like set up a bunch of tethers that pull stuff to the recycler areas and barge areas, and they just like set a bunch of stuff up, set a bunch of charges, blow the whole ship, and the ship just all like just magically goes into all the pieces magically go into the right spots.
Yeah. Directed explosions.
Like a trick breaking pool where just all the balls go into the pockets.
Yeah, like that, except it's a ship exploding and then getting recycled. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool game, and I just love to see those sort of like just unique concepts where it's not like any other game that I have played, and you don't see that very much. Also, the game just like looks really cool. Like the ships are that like. Just like, I don't know, Homeworld is not the only, there's actually a particular sci-fi artist that I think, I can't remember his name, but the sort of aesthetic of the Homeworld ships, this is very much, like, they probably, if they weren't like restricted for IP reasons, would have branded it as in the Homeworld universe, because it very much like, the ships very much look like they belong in a Homeworld game. And that's a really cool, like ship aesthetic. So sort of angular industrial ships. So I don't know. Yeah, really, really cool game. Very unique concept. Definitely a niche concept, I think, but it's cool to see people do
like
really novel kind of games.
Yeah, it sounds like a really cool game that doesn't sound appealing to me at all.
Yeah,
but that sounds really awesome. I guess that's all we've been playing. Did want to go over the Game Awards a little bit because that's the biggest thing that happens yearly in gaming.
This podcast has been going longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign.
Oh, that was such a fucking sick line. That was such a sick line. So me and Matt watched it. Alex, did you catch any of it at all?
I've seen a few highlights. That's about it.
Yeah. I actually missed the first like 15 minutes of it because I got time zoned. I thought it was starting later.
Oh.
So like I missed the first 15 minutes of what seemed like some sort of like pre-show kind of thing because they kept saying like, oh, the Game Awards starts in this time, but like
they do a half-hour pre-show, yet they still present some awards during that time.
Yeah, it's just like
It's basically
it's not a pre-show.
Half an hour till Jeff takes the stage.
Exactly. It's like okay, they're still announcing games and announcing awards.
Yeah, they're doing some like minor announcements.
Like they did all the esports announcements in the quote unquote pre-show. It's like oh whatever. But as far as what was announced, it was very interesting to me that most of what was announced is new IP. Like, a lot of stuff felt like it was new, but at the same time, that made me, like, not that hype about any particular announcement. It's like, okay, this, you know, a 30-second trailer of a game that has a title that I never heard of before. So it's like, maybe I'll be excited for these games when I've seen more of them, but it felt like a very, like, low-key Game Awards in terms of announcements because of that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's only a couple of things that, like, without a list in front of me of what was announced, like, there's only a couple things I can think of off the top of my head that are existing franchises that got a reveal, like Monster Hunter, Hellblade.
Well, this wasn't even the first reveal for Hellblade.
It wasn't. It had a big trailer last year, too.
Yeah, so... do you think that... So the GTA 6 trailer, like, people were saying that leaked. Did you think... Was, like, that maybe supposed to be here or something?
No, it leaked, like, the day before it was supposed to come out. It wasn't...
Okay.
It was. They had a scheduled date for it before
GTA is so big, they don't even need the Game Awards to announce the game.
Although that trailer... I've got my gripes with Rockstar and their game design. I love the storytelling in the games. I'm not really hyped for it, but oh man, there's so much Florida man shit going on in that trailer. I love it.
It's an extremely Florida trailer.
It feels like the most unrealistic GTA trailer. But because it's in Florida, it feels the most realistic.
Just like Gator driving like a Lambo down the street, like on that Art Deco and neon. I'm just like, I mean, that wasn't in the trailer, but I'm like, that could be.
So
that
far,
could be
though,
GTA 6.
I think the biggest problem with 6, though, is that it's not in the 80s.
I mean, yeah, that would have been nice to go back to like a Vice City kind of thing.
Although apparently this one is actually just the entire state, not just like Miami, Vice City, and the surrounding areas. This one's like actually the entire state, apparently.
All right. See, we got conflicting things where, like, you know, GTA, they went from, like, you know, one city to kind of having, like, multiple, like, big areas, and you can go to, now they're doing an entire state. Whereas, Hello Games, No Man's Sky, they made an entire universe, but now they only want to make Earth. They're scaling back.
They're scaling back, but still overpromising.
Yeah, they still say that it's more ambitious than No Man's Sky, which is impossible. Dude needs to learn how to do a presentation. Like, like the earnest indie game developer only goes so far. When it's like, okay, what you're talking about is completely unrealistic. I don't believe you anymore. Yeah, so all this new IP being announced was kind of interesting because, like, every Game of the Year nominee and a lot of the nominees for most of the categories were either sequels or, you know, RE4 remake. So it's like, it's interesting that maybe, like, we're now gonna finally get into the cycle that was supposed to happen earlier when the new consoles came out, where, like, people are making new things for these new consoles. Mm-hmm. Like, I wonder, like, how many of the, like, Game of the Year nominees are, like, also on PS4 and whatever, or, like, older consoles. Like, I mean, you had Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder, which is for the Switch, which is, like, well, whatever. That's Nintendo's got their own thing going.
Yeah.
Like, RE4 remake, was that for PS4 as well? Like, Baldur's Gate. I don't know. Like, I don't actually know if these were or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if any of them were.
I mean, GTA 5 was for PS3, so GTA 6 is going to be for PS4, right?
Yeah. The only other thing that I want to talk about is, wow, Baldur's Gate 3 won a lot of awards.
Yep. I mean, I've heard basically nothing but good things about it.
Yeah, they won. Like, they did, like, a series of, like, I think it was like 3 or 4 awards, like, right before, like, the Game of the Year, and it was just like
Baldur's Gate
3, Baldur's Gate 3, Baldur's Gate 3.
And, like,
I've never even been interested in those like games, and now I'm like, oh man, maybe I should play Baldur's Gate 3.
Well, it's been an extremely long time since Baldur's Gate 2.
Yeah.
And then, like, the Dark Alliance games were different. Those were Diablo clones.
When Baldur's Gate 3 won Best RPG, and that's the only Starfield nomination, and you can just see the pain in Todd Howard's eyes.
Whatever, he got an individual shout out during the
like everyone
awards.
knows Starfield needs like 4 years of mod development before it's the best game ever.
Yep.
Even people who are like hardcore like Bethesda fanboys are like, wait for the mods, bro. Or they're already just like, the game's a lot better. You just got to use this mod pack that installs like 50 mods to like fix the UI, fix the missions, fix the bugs.
And the only other like award that I think merits any mention here is what won Best Independent Game, which was Sea of Stars, which we kind of went off on a previous podcast.
We went off on it. Yeah.
91 Metacritic, which is extremely high. It's one of the highest rated games of this year.
Yeah, I don't understand. I just like I think I mentioned this when we were talking about it too, where I'm just like, some of the biggest problems with that game are that it's too easy, and I still see people complaining that it's hard. And I'm like, this is one of the easiest RPGs I've ever played. It is clearly meant, like, I can only assume it was designed for like people that have not played a lot of RPGs. I don't get it.
I don't know.
I don't know. Like, yeah, okay, and again, like we talked about this. Aesthetically, it's on point. Like it looks great. It sounds great. The story's good. It's not bad.
Serviceable.
It's serviceable. Yeah, like it's competent. But the core of like the battle system is just like kind of undercooked, and the difficulty is it's just too easy of a game, and I'm just like,
they should have spent more time cooking the battle system instead of cooking the cooking mini game.
No, that's the problem. Even the cooking system's like the cooking system is just sort of like not integrated well. You had a warrior cook that doesn't cook in battle. He doesn't use. There's no status effect.
Yeah,
There's no status effect meals. That's the most obvious thing. Like, yeah, I'm gonna cook this thing that produces status effects. It's not a thing. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, were there any games announced that you guys are looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to Sega had this thing where they teased it beforehand. They sent out like a card to some developers that said "New Era, New Energy," and people were speculating what it could be, and like they announced like new games of like 5 of their series. But like I'm looking forward to the End More underneath, because kind of want to see a new Virtual Fighter.
Oh yeah,
I'm hoping that's kind of what included in the End More.
That announcement was also funny because one of the things that they announced, like new games in development, was Crazy Taxi. I'm like, how do you make a Crazy Taxi game in 2023? That was like one of the last like arcade games that like worked.
I know a lot of people will be happy about new
Jet Set Radio. Oh yeah. Whatever. I'm looking forward to. I don't want to play that game. I'm gonna listen to that soundtrack.
Yeah. That is assuming they get a Hideki Naganuma for it.
Hopefully.
But one thing, it's not a game, but something I didn't want to talk about was like they had that whole bit at the beginning with Christopher Judge joking about like his speech and just like them playing the music like pretty much right away to just like get him off stage as a joke. In actuality, though, like they really didn't give people much time for their speeches. They were starting to play them off very, very quickly. Like,
yeah,
like you can at least give them like 2-3 minutes. Christopher Judge's like 9-minute speech. Yeah, that was a little excessive. But
yeah, but
people
like it felt like after they've been talking for like maybe like 45 seconds, not even a minute, like music starts
Yeah.
playing, and it's like, okay, some of these people are like, doing like pretty passionate speeches here. Like, give them time.
Yeah.
I understand the show was really long, but like if this is like there's other like game awards like the Dice Awards and stuff like that, but are any of them really broadcast all that much? Like the
Golden Joystick
that's
Awards
the only one
are.
I can think of. So like if you're gonna have this big awards ceremony where you're celebrating games and you have like all the like heads of the studio and stuff in the audience and they come up there to accept the award, let them talk.
Yeah, like I forget his name right now, but best performance, the guy who plays Asterion in Baldur's Gate 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was getting cut off there. It felt like pretty quickly, and like he didn't even get time because like
He had to start rushing.
Yeah, and like he didn't even get to, because I think part of like if he won, part of what he was going to say up there was like, oh, it's available on Xbox now as well.
Oh, really?
So, but he didn't get to that. Like,
I'm okay with that being
but-
cut. But
yeah,
still.
but even after the fact, Jeff Keighley was saying, okay, yeah, maybe it was a little too soon. So maybe next year there'll be a little more leniency for speech lengths.
Yeah. It's all Christopher Judge's fault. Yeah, like it's weird. The only game that I'm like kind of looking forward to is one that was announced while I wasn't even watching the damn Game Awards, which is like apparently they're making like an Arknights action game, which unfortunately looks like it'll still be a gacha game. So I probably won't be. I'll probably not like it because of that. Like it's weird. Like, okay, you're making this thing based off of gacha IP, and I wish it wasn't a gacha game. As tolerant as I am of them, it's just like that mechanic only works for a very limited subset of gameplay styles. Like tower defense, when you have like 12 different 12 people that you can bring every mission, that makes complete sense that you're collecting and building these giant teams of characters. But like an action game where you're controlling one character, I'm not sure how that really is going to work all that well. But Genshin was popular, so Honkai Third Impact was popular, so.
And one more thing I want to bring up. I know you hate them, Santo, but they're my favorite band. I liked seeing Poets of the Fall perform live.
I muted it.
Wow.
I was also like half watching the Game Awards, half playing Darktide for part of it. The performance looked very like choreographed and crazy.
Well, apparently it's like, so it's a much condensed version. Like the full song is like actually like 15 minutes, but apparently
All
like
right.
it's an entire sequence in the game.
Oh wow.
And like I recently bought, or just the other day I bought the double pack for Max Payne 1 and 2.
Okay.
I am going, like, just everything I've heard about Alan Wake 2, I'm going down the Remedy-verse rabbit hole. I'm going to start with Max Payne 1 and 2, then go into Alan Wake. Just so, like, that way I know, like, by playing Max Payne 1 and 2, I know, like, more about the character that Alan Wake is writing.
I have this vague recollection that Max Payne 3 is bad.
It also wasn't made by Remedy.
Oh. Well, that's probably why.
Max Payne, owned by Rockstar, 1 and 2 made by Remedy. Max Payne is the character Alan Wake writes about in his books, but because they don't own it, they have to call him something else in Alan Wake. But it's just Max Payne.
Yeah,
Peak discomfort.
like I said, I haven't spent a lot of time. I didn't watch the whole thing. But one thing I will say is that I saw Space Marine 2 got announced, and mostly I'm just surprised that that game's getting a sequel after like 12 years.
Like, I was looking at on Steam, and it's just like, it feels like there's a Warhammer 40k game coming out every 2 weeks.
There's so many. There are so many Warhammer 40k games coming out, which is actually why I'm surprised. Like, I'm kind of surprised that it went so long before they made a sequel to Space Marine, because I remember that people liked that game a lot.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically Gears of War with Space Marines, which is basically what Gears of War is already.
Yeah.
It's just now it's 40k branding.
But I was happy to see that it's going to have Tyranids. Because one thing I will say about 40k games is that I am sick of chaos. Every single game is like Space Marines versus Chaos.
Or Imperium versus Chaos.
Or Imperium versus Chaos.
It's just like...
And I'm like, there's so much interesting stuff in the 40k universe, and Games Workshop just gets tunnel vision on Space Marines and Chaos just all the time. It happens even in the tabletop, where...
Yeah, and like, there's not enough Tau, there's not enough Orcs, there's not nearly enough Orcs.
There's not nearly enough Orcs, which is actually really weird, because
the
Orcs are actually like... I feel like the Orcs, especially as they've gone and kind of developed some of the character of this, like... The Orcs have this like kind of amusing British like Cockney kind of thing in their lines, and like just the writing and the silly things like, oh, the red ones go faster. Like there's so much to draw from with the Orcs, and they're like weirdly underrepresented in the games, except for Dawn of War. Dawn of War gives a lot of great stuff. The Dawn of War series gave a lot of great stuff to the Orcs, like great lines and just fun stuff.
Like there was a like Orc based like dog fighting game, like flight dog fighting games like Crimson Skies or something like that. Apparently it wasn't that good.
Oh.
So
I mean,
nobody talked about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the problem, is that there's a lot of 40k games. There's too many, I think, and a bunch of them are kind of bad or just underdeveloped, I feel like. Mm-hmm. Dawn of War, the first one, I feel like was a high point, where they made Dawn of War, and then they made 3 expansion packs that just continually added to the game to the point where it got basically all of the like kind of popular fact, like
it got like everybody except Tyranids, which was like, aw.
Yeah, it never got Tyranids.
You can't put the Zerg in here?
Yeah.
Real-time strategy game? What the hell?
Yeah, actually, fun fact, StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game, and Blizzard started making their 40k game and then went to Games Workshop, and Games Workshop was just like, no. And so they just made it anyway, and
that's
changed
one of the most
branding.
Hilarious like missed opportunities.
Yeah, that's such a big miss. Can you imagine like if StarCraft was actually a 40k game?
It'd be crazy.
It would be like, oh man, like the entirety of the 40k like landscape would be different.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely the biggest L GW ever had was turning down Blizzard to make 40k StarCraft. And but yeah, like I feel like it's good to see some like there's Tyranids in Space Marine 2. I'm like, okay, yeah, the Tyranids don't get nearly enough love, which is actually weird because it's such an easy.
It's just like, okay, it's the alien faction in your space thing.
Yeah, it's the most alien faction, and it's like such an easy sell too, because it's like, like there's so many things like StarCraft, Starship Troopers, Alien, where like clearly there's a lot of popular like culture that around aliens that the Tyranid faction in 40k basically kind of uses, and GW's just like, nah, we don't like it. So it's good to see them, but I'm not actually that excited for the game itself, just because I played Space Marine and thought that it was okay. I'm also just 40k'd out. I've just been disappointed. Like, we were playing Dark Tide last night, and I was kind of like, this game's okay, but it just disappoints me. Like, the aesthetic's great, but the actual gameplay, I'm just like, it's Left 4 Dead, but worse.
I never got into 40k. There's been a couple times I've been close.
Yeah.
I love the aesthetic of the Space Wolves. Just dudes in power armor riding giant wolves.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I guess, like, one other thing that was announced at the Game Awards that could potentially be interesting is a Metaphor Refantasio, which is a game from creators of Persona 3, 4, and 5. And they went off to... Well, no, it's still an Atlas game. They like leave to new studios, but the creative leads of that and like they got the same composer, same character designer and stuff. So it's basically just like, okay, all the same people, but not the same universe.
I was gonna say, I knew it was a JRPG as soon as you said the title.
Well, yeah.
I don't know what that game's supposed to be because I saw like in the trailer a section that looked turn-based and then a section that looked action combat.
Yeah, and like a section that was just like pure action, where it was like running like it's like a Crash Bandicoot level. They're running kind of like towards the camera, and like a bridge like collapsing behind them. I was like, what the hell? What's going on? And it also looked like there's like social links and stuff like Persona. So I was like, okay, it's weird.
It looks to me what people probably expected SMT Cross Fire Emblem to look like.
In terms of aesthetics, yeah, I agree.
Aesthetics, yeah. Not idols.
Still, what a swerve. One of the biggest swerves ever.
Actually, there are two other things that slipped my mind. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Got to see a little bit of in-game of that. And then, yeah, that looks like Tenkaichi. And actually, after the fact, it did come out that the game is going to have a large roster, which
perfect
is what I want from that game.
Like playing like Bukai Tenkaichi 3, was it that you had? Yep. Like, I didn't necessarily love playing that game, but the fact that the roster had every side character in the entire series basically like playable and like slightly unique was just like crazy and kind of hilarious. And yeah, I was a little worried that a modern version of this would be a small base roster and a ton of paid DLC, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Mm-hmm. The other thing which really surprised me, not that it's a game I'm interested in, but is that Skull and Bones got a release date. Yeah, and you were telling me that it's because of taxes.
Pretty much. They are legally obligated by...
I think you said
Singapore.
The Singaporean government.
They are legally obligated by the Singapore government to release this game.
What?
Because they were given substantial tax breaks.
This is an Ubisoft game, by the way.
Okay.
It's basically Ubisoft's Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, just like
But I think it's been in development since before Sea of Thieves.
They got announced around the same time. It's
yeah.
like, oh, is this like the new thing that's going to be like big and games, like a bunch of pirate games or something like that? And it's like, well, it's going to take a while. Well, 3-player co-op, which is an interesting number.
Yeah, no, it's weird. There's a lot of games doing the 3-player co-op now. It's weird.
Oh, you know what I saw that was released this year? Trine 5.
5? Oh, they're on 5 now.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It probably plays the exact same as the other ones.
Yeah, probably.
Like, oh, that's pretty crazy.
I don't mind. I didn't mind trying. I've played the first 2. They were good.
They were okay.
They were okay. Yeah. If you're looking for a 3-player co-op game, I mean, that's the one.
I guess. 3-player asymmetric co-op.
Yeah, it's a they're fun. They're fine. They don't blow me away.
Well, that was the the industry as a whole, like the big Jeff Keighley's Game Awards. But I look forward to our awards, the games of our year, which that podcast will be coming out in January at some point, I guess. Our schedule's been erratic. So look forward to that. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can leave them in the comments of our YouTube video or email us at 3levelsdeep@outlook.com. And enjoy the holidays, everybody. Stay safe. Stay sane, which is sometimes difficult. Yeah, have a good one.
See you next year.
See you.